Hi, welcome to my channel. The full version of the audiobook is available on my Patreon. You can quickly find it through the link in my profile description. Thank you for your support.
Chapter 1. An afternoon in Carrington. Under the shade of the trees at Carrington Training Ground, Beckham squinted as he observed the dog Roses climbing the bushes. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, making it difficult for him to open his eyes. Dog Rose must have noticed that a young man with blonde hair, blue eyes, a high nose, fair skin, a warm and noble smile, and a cold gaze when angry always came to see her. Bathed in the sunlight, both of them looked at each other with smiles on their faces. The midday sun in August is just right, perfect for a nap. Beckham wiped the sweat from his forehead, took a deep breath, and a sweet fragrance filled his nostrils. The dog Rose is a plant he recently developed a liking for. As long as you put this little thing in a well-ventilated and sunny place, you can see it grow every day. This is just like myself. In another month, we will see these little guys climbing the bushes bearing bright red fruit. Rose hips can be used to make jam, syrup, and wine. Ms. Kathy at the front desk said she would keep some for herself, so Beckham comes to check on the little one's growth every day. This is the most pleasant moment for him after training every day. He doesn't know if it's the sweet fragrance of flowers that calms his mind or the ease and comfort that comes from the brain after recovering from fatigue, but this place always allows him to leave all his worries behind. Beckham recalled his childhood days running and playing football in Chase Lane Park. His father probably thought he was making a mess of the backyard, so he took him to the park to play. He played football in that park until he was 5 years old before gradually moving on to other fields. From as far back as he can remember, he has spent almost every day with football. He fondly remembers playing football with his father during his childhood. His father gave him life, love and warmth, and also made him fall in love with a sport called football. My father had to train 3 times a week, and the peak of his football career was in the semi-professional league. In Beckham's memory, his father was a fierce center forward with excellent technique, whose only flaw was that he was often called offside. It took David Beckham, who watched his father play football from the sidelines, several months to truly understand what offside meant. His father would always kick the soccer ball high and then let him catch it, so whenever Gary Neville miscontrolled the ball, he would laugh and mock him, saying, "I was better than you when I was 4. He could stop passes from all angles with ease when he was 4 years old, and by the age of 5 he had already developed the skill of powerful shots. At the age of 7, he dominated the community team he played for with his golden right foot, scoring over 100 goals in one summer. When David was 9 years old, on the way home from training, his father told him, "David, I'm going to interrupt my regular training and use that time to train with you." Beckham was just a child at the time, but he could still deeply understand what such a sacrifice meant to his father. "When I was 10 years old. David, help me. Dave, that bastard, is trying to ruin me." Gary Neville's rude shout completely interrupted Beckham's thoughts. He frowned slightly, revealing a hint of displeasure. "I was just remembering when I was 10 years old, and I was almost at the age where I was considered someone else's child. What's the meaning of you coming here now?" But he quickly recovered and his signature warm smile returned to his face. "Gary, keep your voice down. I'm not your grandfather. Mr. Dave is a nice guy. Why are you picking on him?" Gary Neville's eyes widened in disbelief. "Mr. David, I hope we're not talking about the same person. Now, please allow me to provide evidence." He pointed to the medical report. "Look here, this is my medical report. He's planning to report my real height to the Premier League, so that all the centre forwards in England will know who to target. Every manager who sees Manchester United stats will say, 'Look. They're playing a 1.78-metre boy at centre-back. We can win this game just by crossing.'" Beckham almost laughed when he saw Gary Neville, whose face still had a touch of boyishness, puffing out his chest and speaking in a deliberately mature man's tone. "You're blaming Earth's gravity for not growing taller. Dave, you've registered your real height, that's called being responsible. How come you call yourself a villain? Besides, with your small frame, you wouldn't be afraid of straining your back from high balls if you played centre-back in the Premier League." Of course, Beckham only muttered it to himself. Gary Neville has a very strong sense of pride, and if he really said that, the guy would definitely get angry. "Gary, didn't the old man tell you to play right back? 1.78 meters is the standard height for a right back. Beckham's approving tone pleased Gary Neville, and his temper visibly subsided. That's true, but now the team only has Steve as a centre-back. Didn't you see that I've already played centre-back for 2 days during the scrimmage? Besides, is it really that difficult to add 2 centimeters to my height? 2 centimeters is insignificant to him, but it can give a young player hope for the start of his new professional career. Beckham nodded speechlessly. This guy could always come up with some twisted logic for everything. Why don't you tell him these things? Beckham was also helpless. You keep coming up with one fallacy after another to me. One minute you say you're about to become the target of public criticism, and the next you say that 2 centimeters of length is related to a young man's life. Doctors have long said that length is not the deciding factor. Cough cough, how come this statement takes on a different meaning when summarized? Well, the key issue is that Gary's self-convincing is useless. He's not Dave, so he can go find Dave with his fallacies. After hearing Beckham's words, Gary Neville hesitated for a moment, then said with a troubled expression, "How about we go together?" Beckham was speechless after hearing his words. It's like you're all talk and no action in front of me, but you don't even have the courage to talk to the team doctor. You're just a coward who's tough in his own backyard. He thought for a moment, then suddenly said with a mischievous grin, "You should have called Phil along. In case you say something wrong, you can just pat your chest and say that you are Phil." Gary Neville has often caused trouble for his younger brother since they were young. Since the two look very alike, he would occasionally push his brother out to share the burden of the damage. His younger brother was really unlucky. Gary agreed with Beckham's suggestion, "Let's call Ryan over too, and see if we can get that guy to change his mind." Beckham was speechless again. You really went and messed with your brother. It's obvious you wanted to send more people to fill the seats and make a fool of him. Gary Neville's lips curled into a sly smile. I'm not stupid. If that younger brother keeps causing trouble, I'll cut ties with him. Knowing Dave's personality, it would be strange if he didn't bring a handsome guy like you along. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. There's always someone who has designs on me. Tada. The door isn't locked. But I'm a bit busy right now. If you're not in a hurry, come back this afternoon. The team doctor, Dave, with his round head, spoke somewhat curtly. He was in front of his computer, outlining the season's medical plans, and was a little annoyed at being interrupted. Beckham gently pushed the door open, winked at Dave with his right eye, playfully tilted his head up, and said with a smile, "Mr. Dave, could I have a moment of your time? I'm a little confused about 1 or 2 indicators on my medical report." Beckham is confident that he can chat with this round, goofy guy whenever he shows up. In fact, it wasn't just Dave, most of the staff at the training facility were exceptionally friendly to Beckham. Whenever he needed help, everyone would lend a hand, and it was always free of charge. Even a few rule-abiding, inflexible old-fashioned people often abandon those rigid principles and give him the green light. As he expected, Dave, who was initially a little annoyed at being disturbed, immediately put on a smile. "Oh, David, our good lad, I was planning to come find you later, but you've come at just the right time. Let's talk about your weight." Dave is a big fan of Beckham. He was feeling a bit dizzy just now, so he needed to see this handsome guy whose looks surpassed 99% of the world's population. His good looks were a feast for the eyes. Dave has no problem with his sexual orientation and is never embarrassed by liking Beckham's looks. Most people at the training base feel at ease only after seeing this young man every day. He swore that if the person who had just winked at him had been Nicky Bart, he would have kicked him out of the galaxy without hesitation. They struck up a conversation so easily. Beckham muttered to himself and took a few steps forward, followed by the Neville brothers and Giggs. Dave ignored the other 3 and continued to Beckham, "David, you're in great shape. You've grown to 6 feet, 1.83 meters, tall, but you only weigh 154 pounds, 70 kilograms. It might be a bit difficult for you to handle a Premier League match. Are you following my diet? Holy crap, this sphere remembers my physical condition so clearly, it goes straight to the data without a script. For a middle-aged man, that's really thoughtful." Beckham felt a tightness in his lower body at Dave's attention. "Mr. Dave, I have been strictly following your diet this month. Although I have not gained weight, I am full of energy." Regarding Dave's interest in him, Beckham only hoped that he could only admire from afar. Well, there's a saying that goes, distance makes the heart grow fonder. It doesn't matter if he feels awkward, as long as the atmosphere doesn't get cold. Beckham only says the nicest things. The idea that he was full of power is pure nonsense. Anyway, I'm just here to pave the way for Gary Neville. As long as everyone's happy, that's all that matters. Dave nodded in satisfaction. It's good that it works. David, you're still growing, so if there are any problems, be sure to let me know. After chatting with Beckham for a few more minutes, Dave turned his attention to the other three, adopting a serious expression. Gig said his hamstring was still uncomfortable, but Dave dismissed him with a few words. This is a common problem for young wingers, so there's nothing to be alarmed about. Seeing that Dave was no longer going to speak, Gary Neville came up and asked a few trivial questions. Dave answered the other party with the unquestionable attitude of a doctor. Ever since his conversation with Beckham ended, whether it was Giggs or Gary Neville, their conversations had turned into a question-and-answer format. Dave wanted to end the conversation as quickly as possible, adopting a businesslike approach. Wait, sir, I have another request. Gary Neville was also frustrated. He saw Beckham chatting quite well, but when it came to his turn, the atmosphere became so cold. I originally planned to say a few words to transition and then naturally bring up the matter of changing my height, but I didn't expect this round ball to be so uncooperative, so I had to force it out. Dave glanced at Gary Neville and asked, "Are you Gary or Phil?" This question almost made Gary Neville spit out blood. After all that talking, you still don't even know who I am. You're so careless. Mr. Dave, this is Gary. I noticed that my height on my medical report is 1.78 meters. I would like to ask you to add 2 centimeters to my height when you report the data. These 2 short sentences seemed to have drained Gary Neville of his energy. He was tense and looked exhausted. Dave frowned and asked why, to which Gary Neville's reply became incoherent. Do you know what a 1.78-meter centre-back means in the Premier League? Beckham was speechless, and Gary Neville, trying to cover his embarrassment, became increasingly aggressive. It was no wonder things were unlikely to get done. Mr. Dave, what Gary means is that this height is obviously not enough of a threat for a centre-back. If he could add 2 centimeters, it would feel different. You know, although there is only a 2 centimeter difference between 1.8 meters and 1.78 meters, the feeling they give is completely different, which can also greatly help his confidence. Dave's expression softened noticeably. I think a player should be honest first and foremost, but playing in the Premier League is indeed very stressful, and I will think about it carefully. He didn't say anything definitively, but even a fool could see that the matter was resolved. Having achieved his goal, Beckham offered a few insincere compliments to Dave before leaving the medical room with the other 3. As Beckham stepped out of the medical room, he saw Scholes holding out his hand to But in the distance. You lost, pay up. Scholes and But had made a £100 bet on whether Gary Neville could change his height, so they had been waiting outside the door. Looking at Gary Neville's carefree smile, you don't need to ask to know that he has succeeded. The whole world loves David, he's always been a good guy in everyone's eyes, while I'm just a bastard. Gary Neville sang in a sarcastic, tenor tone, adding a flourish to the last line. Beckham was speechless. Where did your flamboyance go? Why are you so unrefined when it comes to serious matters? Fine, whatever makes you happy. I'm too lazy to argue. Looking at the time, it was almost noon. Beckham prepared to pack up, go home, quickly finish lunch, and take a nap so he could have a training session at 3 p.m., which he absolutely couldn't miss. As a result, Gary Neville insisted on coming along, and Philip Neville followed as well, wanting to freeload at Beckham's house for dinner. Holy crap, I was trying to help you out, and you brought your brother to my house for a free meal. Who the hell can I complain to about this? Beckham reluctantly drove his Volkswagen Golf, with the 3 mangy dogs in tow, out of the training ground. Giggs was the third one. As he passed through the office area, Kathy, the receptionist, stopped him and handed him a package. David, this is your package. It feels like a book. Have a good day. She then kissed him on the cheek. Beckham smiled and thanked him, and the car continued towards the training ground gate. Gary Neville glanced in his rearview mirror and saw Casey still waving goodbye. With a mischievous grin, he said to Beckham, Miss Casey's greatest achievement in her life must be kissing David Beckham for 5 consecutive years. As he spoke, he quickly unwrapped Beckham's package, which, as Casey had guessed, contained a black hardcover book. Hey David, the cover of this book has your picture on it. Your brainless fans edited your photo to make you look like a 30-year-old man, and the book is called My Position. What a load of crap. Gary Neville casually tossed the book at Philip Neville in the back row. Casey will kiss you if she saves your package, and Phil will sleep with you if he reads you a chapter. Just say it. No sooner had Gary Neville finished speaking than Beckham suddenly slammed on the brakes. Gary Neville was caught off guard. If he hadn't been wearing his seatbelt, his head would probably have been in serious trouble. Beckham angrily slapped the other man's neck repeatedly with his left hand. If you have nothing better to do, go find some women, don't bring me up. Gary Neville, howling in pain from the beating, shouted menacingly to the back row, brothers, what are we waiting for? Let's take this pretty boy down right now. Ah! David, stop hitting me. I won't say it again. My new book has been uploaded. Please add it to your favorites and give it a recommendation vote. End of this chapter. Chapter 3 story about transferring to Real Madrid is utterly awful. After a nearly half-hour drive, the four arrived at Beckham's three-story villa in the northern part of the city. The villa was located in a small town with a decent landscape. As one of the first members of the class of '92 to get rich, Giggs bought a house there first. Later, he discovered that the villa was listed for sale and informed Beckham, who had just received the contract and had a signing bonus of £200,000. So the next day, after training, Beckham drove his red, third-hand Ford, which he had bought from Giggs for £3,000, to the somewhat unpleasantly named village of Wersler. Together with Giggs and Gary Neville, they successfully reduced the price of the villa to £150,000, freeing up funds for the car purchase and renovations. Entering the villa, Gary Neville skillfully turned on the stereo next to the television. Ryan, give Phil some change, David's family is out of side dishes. As Giggs arranged the pool balls at the pool table, he complained, why do I always have to pay? You guys always seem so comfortable spending other people's money like this. Beckham poked his head out of the kitchen and winked at Gary Neville. Since this kid lives such a meticulous life, we should have a good talk with him. The 20-year-old Giggs has been playing for Manchester United's first team for 2 years. According to the club's wage rating system, his weekly wage has risen to £10,000, which is barely enough to make him wealthy. But this guy is a notorious miser, already known as the Welsh Grandad. Beckham has long wanted to correct his stinginess, but doing something like this would be a bit out of character. As the most handsome man in England, he still cherishes his reputation. Of course, someone has to do the dirty work, and Gary Neville is the lackey he has cultivated over the years. A cough, the best partner. Sure enough, Gary Neville understood immediately. Ryan, I hope what you just said was just a joke. If you want to do some calculations, we can do them properly. The lunch was at David's house, so to be precise, there should be a venue fee. Also, since you hitched a ride, you should pay for the transportation. I bought the pool table, and David provided the steak and seasonings, and even cooked it himself, which should also be charged for. Phil's round-trip labor costs must also be factored in. In addition. Didn't you realize I was joking with Phil? Giggs first laughed heartily a few times, then deftly pulled 2 red £50 notes from his wallet, by the full amount according to David's list. Don't try to save me any money. Well, strictly speaking, this guy isn't stingy. He just has the bad habit of being meticulous about saving money. In short, it's not easy to spend his money. As he watched Philip Neville leave, Beckham poked his head out of the kitchen and gave Gary Neville a thumbs up. Beckham skillfully pan-fried 4 semi-finished steaks to medium rare, made 4 servings of spicy chicken nuggets, added some greens and mashed potatoes, and poured 4 cups of black tea, thus preparing a fairly substantial lunch. The first floor of his villa largely retained the original owner's decor, with a large hall furnished with a pool table, leather sofas, a television, a stereo system, and a fireplace, which became the main entertainment area for everyone during their leisure time. Holy crap, what did you put in your chicken nuggets? Why are they so spicy? Giggs downed the entire cup of black tea in one gulp, slurping as he asked. Not only him, but the Neville brothers were also so enraged by the spiciness that their scalps tingled, and they were a bit disoriented at the moment. Beckham didn't react much, calmly replying, I added some hot sauce. The brand I use today is spicy, so it should be fine. Seeing his calm demeanor, the other 3 continued eating. reasoning that since he seemed to know what he was doing, the food shouldn't kill anyone. Even while eating and chatting, the four of them finished their lunch in just over 10 minutes. "Phil, tidy up the table, and don't forget to wash the dishes. The £10 tip I just gave you included the cleaning fee." Watching Giggs boss his younger brother around, Gary Neville pouted in displeasure, but he didn't want to do the dishes, so he could only close the door and let his brother go. "Gentlemen, I'm going upstairs to rest. The bedding is next to the fireplace. See you in an hour." About 20 minutes later, Beckham felt sleepy and went to his bedroom on the top floor to rest. This was his private space, and he would never allow outsiders to enter. After the afternoon training session, Schmeichel walked up to Giggs with a serious expression. "Ryan, tell me honestly, did you go to see a woman at noon?" Giggs, his face pale, spread his hands in confusion. "Peter, I don't understand what you mean. Could you be more specific?" Schmeichel looked at him with exasperation. "Okay, Ryan, what did you do all afternoon? Why did you have no energy during training? It felt like that bitch took you 7 times, ha ha ha." Schmeichel's sarcasm left Giggs somewhat embarrassed, yet he was powerless to refute it. He was in a terrible state that afternoon, but he couldn't tell the other person it was because he had eaten spicy chicken nuggets. He went to the toilet 5 times in a row, and only stopped before training. Giggs glanced at Beckham and the Neville brothers with a sense of sullenness, wondering why he was the only one who felt weak and exhausted after eating the same chicken nuggets. On the training ground, Beckham was still practicing free kicks with great enthusiasm, and he didn't leave the field until almost lunchtime. After dinner, he leaned back on the sofa contentedly, enjoying the rare leisure time after training. He planned to do some weight training after his dinner was almost digested. His living space may not have much else, but it has everything related to training. He has practically turned the second floor of the villa into a gym. He happened to see the black hardcover book that Philip Neville had placed on the sofa armrest. It was a gift from a fan. This book even has a table of contents, and the layout is quite professional. Beckham turned to the title page, where he thanked many people in his own words, like an award ceremony speech. Some of the people mentioned were people he knew, while others were names he had never heard of. He continued turning the pages, and the title of the second chapter caught his attention, To Real Madrid. The story is consistently told and expressed in his voice, and some of the psychological descriptions are very much in line with his personality. This fan has clearly been following his news closely. Well, it's a bit creepy, being studied isn't always a pleasant experience. Hopefully, this anonymous fan can control himself and limit their interaction to a book or a few letters. Yes. Even if you can't control yourself, you should act according to your feelings but stop at the level of propriety. This is the bottom line, otherwise, the side effects of being handsome would be unbearable. In his transfer to Real Madrid, he didn't go it alone, he brought his wife, children, and a sizable agent team with him. The author arranged for him to marry Victoria, a woman he had heard of from a girl group called the Spice Girls. Although he had never met Victoria, he could imagine that she must be a stylish woman. He had heard of these kinds of girl groups. After their debut, they would often sing some catchy, upbeat pop songs and then film a music video with hot outfits and explosive visuals. The most distinctive feature of this type of song is that even if you've never heard it before, you can still hum along to the next line of the melody. Idol groups are like fast food, they have a strong taste, are easy to digest, but have no nutritional value. They become popular quickly, but they lack substance. Once people get tired of them, their attention will soon shift to new generation groups. Idols are products on an assembly line, with an astonishing rate of updates and replacements. Beckham may have been somewhat resistant because he was forced to marry a wife who didn't have any outstanding qualities. It seems the author's vision is limited, forcibly creating an idol family. By the way, the story features a child of his own, a little boy named Brooklyn. He forced his wife to have a son. To be honest, this story is not very relatable. What was even more unpleasant was yet to come. In early July, he took his family to Real Madrid club, and news media followed his car all the way from the airport to the club. Those crazy reporters started following him from the highway, and no matter how fast his driver was going, they would keep up by stepping on the gas. Good heavens, this scene is infuriating. Beckham skimmed through the rest of the chapter and then put the book aside. From today's perspective, this book is not easy to digest. He turned on the TV, randomly changed the channel, and a group of hot girls singing and dancing appeared on the screen. This is a music video, and the short-haired girl with the most uninhibited expressions is Victoria. Those legs are really nice. Just as Beckham was getting into the swing of things, that story that he wasn't entirely happy with resurfaced. Okay, this girl is nothing special. I don't want to live a life constantly being chased by gossip reporters. This Victoria probably wants to live in the spotlight every day, marrying her would definitely bring no peace. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, The Crescent Moon Blade makes its debut. On August 12, just 1 week before the start of the new season, Beckham believed that Manchester United were not ready. Manchester United sold Paul Ince and Mark Hughes on the first day of the summer transfer window, and Kanchelskis is currently training with the reserve team and should leave the club in the next 2 weeks. These 3 players were key members of the team in recent seasons and were instrumental in the club's 2 consecutive Premier League titles. Ferguson's sudden purge triggered a series of chain reactions. Knowing that Manchester United was short of players, several players who were linked with the team were priced high, and some competitors who were initially open to the idea immediately terminated their transfer negotiations with Manchester United. Beckham learned from the morning newspaper that Tottenham Hotspur had officially announced the successful contract extension of right-winger Darren Anderton. The England international and Manchester United had been on the verge of finalising their deal. Everyone thought that Anderton's next appearance in the newspapers meant he had successfully transferred to Manchester United, but unexpectedly, he got a contract extension. It's unclear how Tottenham managed to keep him. When Beckham saw the newspaper, Ferguson's angry expression immediately came to mind. Throughout the morning training session, all the players on the team behaved obediently, were motivated, and took initiative. The quality of the training session was frighteningly high, and even Ferguson, who initially had a gloomy expression, smiled. The training session wasn't very intense, as Manchester United had a friendly match against Bradford City in the afternoon. At the end of training, Ferguson announced the starting lineup for the pre-season friendly, with Beckham starting as the right winger. With Captain Bruce and David May both injured, the team now only has Pallister as a true centre-back, and Gary Neville, who played centre-back throughout his youth, has been moved to the centre of the defence by Ferguson. This is like forcing a duck onto a shelf. Upon learning that he would be playing centre-back for the team for the next 2 weeks, Gary Neville's entire demeanour changed. Beckham saw in him a mixture of melancholy, stubbornness, pride, and tragedy. During the afternoon's warm-up match, the stands at Old Trafford displayed the slogan, "1966 was the most important year for English football, Eric was born." This is another problem facing Ferguson, as his key attacking player Cantona is likely to transfer to Inter Milan. This unruly and self-willed Frenchman was banned worldwide for 9 months last season for clashing with Crystal Palace fans. At the time, board chairman Edwards had already announced his intention to terminate the Frenchman's contract, but Ferguson subsequently convened an emergency meeting and won over the board with his hairdryer tactics. The club not only did not terminate the Frenchman's contract, but instead offered him a large contract to keep him. The matter had been resolved, and Cantona trained with the team in July and even participated in a closed training match at the end of the month. Manchester United considered this match as part of their training, but after news reports surfaced, some commentators believed that Cantona violated his suspension by participating in the match, and that the FA should investigate and impose further penalties. Cantona has once again become the focus of attention and a hot topic in the football world. Some curious reporters tried to interview Cantona, but the Frenchman refused. A reporter also successfully interviewed board chairman Edwards, who firmly stated, "Manchester United does not believe that Cantona violated the FA's ban. Cantona participated in a training match, not an official match. The FA should not discuss or impose additional penalties on this matter." In any case, the furious Frenchman was thoroughly enraged by the FA and the media. He said goodbye to Ferguson and went back to France for vacation. The English media had no intention of letting the Frenchman off the hook. They followed Cantona all the way to Martinique, constantly filming his pregnant wife. Cantona was completely enraged, and he knocked down the English reporter on the spot. The reporter called the police, and France's strict privacy laws protected Cantona, but the French were truly disgusted by the English media. Inter Milan, fresh off the signing of Paul Ince from Manchester United, immediately expressed their interest in the French striker through the media. The Frenchman indicated he would consider moving to another league, which made Ferguson uneasy. With less than 2 months left in his suspension, the player had left because of the media's anger. What was going on? With the consent of the board and fan groups, Manchester United displayed a banner praising the Frenchman during the pre-season friendly. It is said that Ferguson will make a special trip to France, as he is determined to keep Cantona. With Cantona causing trouble, Manchester United is also showing signs of getting into a mess. Less than 10 minutes into the game, Giggs was tackled by the opposing centre-back in front of the penalty area. Beckham immediately ran to Giggs, who was lying on the ground. "Ryan, you can't just lie here like this. You can't afford the stadium's water and electricity bills." Giggs clutched his leg with a mournful expression. "The tackle wasn't the problem, but my hamstring hurt terribly when I landed. I don't think I can play anymore." Beckham nodded, and Dave said that the hamstring injury was nothing serious. "Since you're alright, I'll get back to business." Listening to the doctor is usually the right thing to do. After confirming that Giggs was alright, Beckham held the football in his arms. The free kick was taken from the edge of the penalty area, close to the center. "It's time to show our true power." Beckham placed the ball at the penalty spot, retreating while observing the goalkeeper's position. Because it was a friendly match, Bradford's wall was sparsely populated, and the goalkeeper appeared careless. Beckham's right corner of his mouth turned up slightly. The human wall was less effective than a prop. He believed that as long as the ball hit the goal, it would score. But it wasn't time to be complacent yet. Beckham took a deep breath to calm himself down and then began his running start. He realized he'd already started his run-up, but the goalkeeper's attention was still on the goalkeeper's wall. How thoughtful was this guy? Beckham raised his left hand high, swung his right leg fully, and the moment the ball was kicked, he felt that the ball should be in. The football bypassed the wall of players, drew a very large arc laterally, and suddenly changed direction as it approached the goal, flying into the goal almost grazing the post. I've got it. This was Beckham's first free kick for Manchester United. After scoring, he opened his arms and laughed heartily. His teammates all ran up and patted him on the back. It was a warm-up match, so everyone was quite restrained. If this were a league match, I might get injured by my teammates if I didn't take care to protect myself. If this happened in a match against Liverpool, you'd have to run around after scoring, otherwise you might get piled on top of your excited teammates. Beckham's mind raced as he observed the reactions of the others, while Ferguson chuckled and clapped. The fans in the stands were singing, and Bradford's goalkeeper was awkwardly touching his nose with his glove. After taking that free kick, Beckham felt completely refreshed. But the good start didn't last long. Less than 5 minutes after Manchester United scored, their opponents scored as well. Bradford City's centre-forward received a cross from his teammate and powerfully headed the ball into the goal, making Gary Neville look like a schoolchild in front of him. Manchester United restarted the game, and Beckham noticed that Gary Neville only reached Pallister's neck. What an amazing centre-back pairing. Beckham felt sorry for Gary Neville for a second. Given his height, if he dared to appear on the English pitch, he would definitely be pinned down and beaten by the opponents. His prediction proved accurate. Bradford's attacking players focused on dominating Gary Neville in the later stages of the game. 10 minutes later, the opposing centre-forward received the ball like a bulldozer, forcefully knocking him down and scoring again. Beckham can hardly imagine how opponents would deal with Gary Neville if he were put on the Premier League pitch. Just thinking about it makes him nervous. A new day has begun, which means you've got more recommendation votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 5 Wasabi Lobster. At halftime, Manchester United and Bradford City were tied 2-2. Beckham, who scored the goal, was in a good mood. He signed autographs for several fans who had posters of him before heading back to the locker room. Those fans were all die-hard Manchester United supporters, and being recognized by the team's loyal fans gave him a refreshing feeling. In the locker room, Ferguson was talking to Bruce about horse racing. As the second most popular sport in the UK, horse racing is undoubtedly an aristocratic sport. Apart from betting on horses, the entry requirements for this sport are significantly higher than those for football. Horse racing has developed into a mature industry chain, with many people making a living in each link, from horse breeding, horse training, horse racing to horse betting. This sport was developed by two monarchs, James I and Charles II, so owning a thoroughbred racehorse was considered a symbol of status. Although the British royal family is now merely a national mascot, celebrities from all walks of life still like to get involved in this movement. There's a famous British saying, "A man with money will play with horses." That statement is correct. Even Ferguson, who considered himself a member of the working class, was not immune to this. He was boasting to Bruce and Parrish about a horse he had tamed in the Newmarket wilderness. It is said that his foal has a remarkable pedigree, being a descendant of the thoroughbred Godolphin Arabian and possessing a pedigree certificate. No, I don't understand. It's true, you can't force yourself to fit in if you're not in the same circle. The three of them talked in increasingly detailed terms, using a lot of technical jargon to show off. Beckham gradually found it difficult to understand and simply gave up trying. He never gambled, that was a game only rich people with money to burn could afford. His father instilled in him from a young age the concept that gambling itself is not shameful, it is merely a form of entertainment. But if you want to gamble, you must be prepared to lose all your money. On the other side of the locker room, Keane and Irwin were discussing how to play a poker game. Giggs, who had strained his hamstring at the start of the show, was listening intently to the two people's explanations, occasionally interjecting a few words. As expected, 8 out of 10 British men gamble. I come from a poor family, so I won't get involved. With that in mind, Beckham decided to make a dartboard, and the dial he made had the Liverpool crest printed on it. Not far away, Scholes was playing for Zaman City. Everyone was doing their own thing, except for Gary Neville. This clumsy centre-back, who made a complete fool of himself in the first half, hung his head in fear, like a thief sitting in a police station, afraid that his other despicable deeds would be discovered. Beckham thought this guy must have had a stroke of incredible luck today. 10 minutes into halftime, the old man was still talking about his horse. He felt a bit sorry for Gary Neville. Ferguson clearly preferred talking about his thoroughbred horse rather than about him. Ferguson didn't speak until a staff member reminded him that it was almost time to go on the field. "Gary, you played terribly in the first half. I could play better as a centre-back than you." I just don't believe it, but everything needs a reason, and Gary is probably doomed." Beckham muttered to himself, preparing to continue watching the drama unfold. Unexpectedly, Ferguson warmly encouraged Gary Neville, "Keep playing well, my boy. If you keep working this hard, you'll be in Manchester United's Hall of Fame sooner or later. You can play as well as David." It's unbelievable that the old man compared a Cullender to me, the free-kick prince. I feel offended. Beckham felt that the old man was ruining his career. He should have scolded the fool as usual, instead of doing what he did. Was he encouraging him to play worse and worse? If you're so capable, then let Gary Neville play all 38 games as a centre-back this season. Do you dare? After encouraging Gary Neville, Ferguson changed the formation to 3-5-2, sandwiching him between Pallister and Paul Parker, and then stockpiling 5 midfielders in the midfield, a strange formation. On the way back to the stadium, Gary Neville perked up again, walking towards Beckham with his head held high, transforming into a proud rooster once more. "David, after listening to the old man's words, I realized that I'm not actually that bad at playing." Gary Neville's words shocked Beckham. This guy was completely outplayed by Bradford centre-forward in the first half. If it had been Alan Shearer, Gary Neville could have scored double-digit goals for the opponent by himself. Even after playing like that, he can still be confident. How big is this kid's nerve? Compared to him, Bradford City's goalkeeper seemed rather thin-skinned. Gary Neville's strength lies in his lack of shame, he can instantly forget his troubles. He is absolutely an extraordinary man. At the start of the second half, Gary Neville, with the support of his well-rounded teammates, suddenly found his rhythm. He loudly directed his teammates, and whenever there was a break in the game, he would discuss the gains and losses with his teammates. People who didn't know him might have thought he was a spiritual leader. Beckham was moved to the center in the second half. He has good stamina, so he often plays in midfield in a youth team, and this position is not unfamiliar to him. With him sweeping through the midfield, Bradford's tactics of through balls, passing to the wings, and crossing became ineffective. Manchester United fielded 5 midfielders in attack and 5 defenders in defence. Bradford City, playing in the second division, ultimately proved too weak and lost 2-4 to Manchester United at home. After the match, Beckham quickly changed his clothes and prepared to drive home. The intensity of today's competition is not high, so he plans to go home early to have dinner and then practice on the equipment for a while. Because Manchester United controlled possession for most of the time, Beckham didn't have much trouble playing. With his physical abilities, he could play 3.5 games of this intensity, so he still has some energy to spare. All of Bradford's shooting opportunities came from Gary Neville. He's definitely a treasure for the opposition. As soon as Beckham entered the garage, he noticed that Ferguson had changed into a casual suit and was carrying a suitcase, looking like he was about to go on a long trip. With only a week left until the league starts, is the old man going on vacation? Boss, when do you plan to meet up with the Antarctic expedition team? Beckham's words made Ferguson burst into laughter. Huh, David, I have important business with Eric. Sorry I can't take you with me. You stay here and train hard. I have important business to attend to, so you can't bring me along. Are you implying I'm your grandson? Beckham's lips twitched slightly. This old man never suffered a loss. After saying just a few words, Beckham had become his grandson. He was going to France to appease Cantona and prevent Inter Milan from poaching him. The old man was over 50 years old, but he was still so decisive and efficient. I admire you. Beckham smiled as he watched the car drive out of the garage, and then drove back to Whistler. Before going home, he went to a supermarket near the town. The refrigerator was almost empty. He also wanted to see if there were any new brands of hot sauce and mustard. As a Briton, Beckham has a natural talent for creating culinary disasters. His cooking skills are mediocre, but he is willing to experiment. He has always been proud of his innovative spirit. If he hadn't constantly explored the unknown, Gary Neville wouldn't have had a stomach of steel. Because his own history of exploring bizarre cuisine is also Gary Neville's history of diarrhea, very few foods can now cause even the slightest ripple in his stomach. Of course, my digestive system is also quite resilient, but that's a natural gift. The main course for dinner was wasabi lobster, which was especially refreshing after the game. He dipped the lobster meat coated in garlic into the wasabi on the small plate. The wasabi in the small dish is known as the fighter jet of the wasabi world. It's said that adding a little soy sauce doubles its power. Beckham took a deep breath and then released the lobster covered in wasabi into the air. The first thing that hits the taste buds is the fresh shrimp meat and the rich broth. Beckham felt that even his soul was enjoying the comfort brought by the food. But then, his soul trembled, and he felt a surge of electricity rush to his nose. Holy crap, he's ascended to heaven. If I had known the wasabi was so strong, I would have called Gary over. End of this chapter. The story continues well from chapter 6 onwards. Wasabi lobster meat can be a bit too strong, but overall it's pretty good. After all, it's all semi-finished products, and as long as you don't mess around, there's not much difference between food made by amateurs and chefs. After digesting his food, Beckham went upstairs and practiced for another 45 minutes. The key to training is perseverance. 45 minutes of training every day may seem ordinary, but the crucial point is to accumulate it over time. Slacking off for one day means training 45 minutes less than your imagined competitors. Unless he has a particularly busy schedule or is feeling unwell, Beckham makes sure to train for a while every day. He enjoys the feeling of overcoming lactic acid buildup because he feels himself getting stronger every time he perseveres. Another 45 minutes of sweltering sweat. In the bathroom, Beckham looked at the man in the mirror, a man with clearly defined muscles, increasing size, and increasingly rugged features. This is the main reason why my weight doesn't increase no matter how much I eat. Fat doesn't help a football player much. In Beckham's mind, an outstanding football player needs to possess excellent explosiveness, outstanding balance, keen game reading ability, and perfect basic skills. Maintaining his physical abilities as much as possible and constantly improving his football skills are his two main goals since becoming a professional player. After washing up and drinking some water, Beckham arrived at his top-floor bedroom early. This is his private little world, and no one is allowed to set foot here without his permission. This is a principle he has always adhered to. Beckham placed the cushion on his waist, then pressed a button next to the bedside table. With a mechanical sound, the wardrobe door facing the bed suddenly opened, and a television set was immediately pushed out. This was his biggest renovation of his bedroom. In his opinion, after a day of training, lying in bed and watching TV for a while before going to sleep is a very pleasant thing. Unfortunately, today's TV programs were uninteresting and completely unengaging. Beckham simply turned off the TV and randomly picked a book from the small bookshelf by the wall as his bedtime reading tool. When did I bring this book up? Beckham found the black hardcover book titled, My Position, a gift from a fan, in his small bookshelf. To be honest, the beginning of the book didn't grab him. The somewhat awkward title page looked contrived, and the reading experience of the first chapter wasn't great either. In this somewhat dark and saccharine story, he and his family traveled to Real Madrid for a pre-transfer medical examination amidst a media frenzy. The unbelievable part didn't end there. Real Madrid broadcast the entire medical examination process live on their paid channel. Even more embarrassing was that after all that torment, he had to stand in the Real Madrid stadium, forcing a smile and telling 2,000 ticket-holding fans, Real Madrid is the greatest club in the world. I am honored to be here at this club. I have always loved Real Madrid, and we will achieve glory together. Don't joke around. The whole world knows I've loved Manchester United since I was a kid, and my transfer to Real Madrid was only for work. In that story, Beckham was asked to kiss the Real Madrid crest, then juggle a ball like a child in front of 2,000 fans watching him, then kick the ball up and control it with his forehead. Beckham felt like a monkey juggling a ball in a circus, doing it only because someone paid for a ticket. However, he still wanted to give the book another chance. It was clear that this anonymous fan had put a lot of effort into the book. The quality of the paper alone was not cheap. He decided to keep reading, provided the rest of the story wasn't too disgusting. To Beckham's surprise, the story became quite interesting starting from the second chapter. The second chapter is called The Flowerbed Killer, and the title itself reveals that the story mainly revolves around my childhood anecdotes. The fans still used the first-person perspective, and to Beckham's surprise, this chapter was written in great detail, vividly depicting his story from age 3 to 9. The memories from that day in front of the dog rose began again. The age of 10 was a turning point in my football career. That year, I grew taller and made significant progress in my football skills. In East London, I used my golden right foot to make the other kids despair. I was practically a god of war among my peers. That year, West Ham United, who had a convenient connection with him, showed great interest in him and invited him to train 2 or 3 times, which was considered a guarantee for his future. Of course, at the age of 10, anything you say is nonsense. The real turning point was when I was 11 years old. Beckham recalled participating in a selection event that year, where hundreds of young players of the same age went through Manchester United's rounds of selection, and only 4 lucky ones were able to get the opportunity to go to Barcelona to watch the game. That selection was crucial for me. I was in London and had no idea whether Manchester United scouts would even see my game. If I hadn't played well that day, I might have missed out on playing for Manchester United for the rest of my life. Beckham still vividly remembers the final stage of the competition. It was a fairly sunny afternoon. The match between Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur had just ended, and I and the other children were taken to the centre of Old Trafford Stadium. He remembers there were 40,000 people in the stadium at the time, a huge event even for him now, so you can imagine how nervous he was. When the presenter mentioned his name and said he was from Leytonstone, all the Tottenham fans cheered. Then the mischievous host announced through a megaphone that David is a crazy Manchester United fan, and all the Tottenham fans started booing, while the more than 30,000 Manchester United fans in the stadium began to applaud. That feeling still feels great when I think about it now. In the same year, Manchester United invited him to a trial. Although Tottenham Hotspur were more eager, Manchester United's allure was hard to resist, especially when they came to London for a match. The club invited him to the stadium to watch the game, and when he met Manchester United's top stars in the locker room, he made up his mind. The year I turned 12 was also important, because that's when I met Ferguson, a young and energetic Scotsman. Turning 13 was a historic moment, the year Tottenham and Manchester United both offered him contracts. Tottenham was closer to home, and their contract looked good, but when Manchester United offered to sign him, Tottenham was completely forgotten. Beckham remembers that day he was wearing a black jacket and a tie with the Manchester United crest, and he trembled slightly as he picked up the pen that Ferguson handed him and signed his name on the contract. Because he was too young, Manchester United kept him in London for training, and at the age of 14, he went abroad with the county team to participate in competitions. Dutch players don't play by the rules, while all German players play in a very similar way. When I was 15 years old, Beckham fell into a deep sleep with fond memories of his childhood. He dreamt that he was lifting a trophy, and his teammates were jumping around excitedly around him. That was clearly a good dream. End of this chapter. Do we really have to discuss chapter 7 now? With 7 days to go before the start of the season, Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson travelled to France alone, stayed there for a day, and then returned to Manchester City. As a Premier League champion manager, Ferguson's actions immediately sparked heated discussions, with many media outlets that had previously questioned Manchester United's season prospects bringing up old issues again, once again putting the Scotsman in the spotlight. With 7 days left in the season, Manchester United manager Sir Alex Ferguson disregarded the team and went to France alone to meet with suspended players. The Scotsman's behaviour was completely putting the cart before the horse. The Manchester United manager went to France to meet Cantona. He rode on the Frenchman's motorcycle through the main streets of Paris and looked like he was in love. Instead of going to see the Frenchman who is still 2 months away from returning, Ferguson should consider strengthening the existing squad. After all, the Premier League starts in 7 days. The contents of the newspaper made Beckham inexplicably worried. He felt that Ferguson's behaviour was consistent with his usual decisiveness, but what the newspaper said didn't seem wrong either. In short, he felt uneasy not seeing Ferguson, who had been Manchester United's manager ever since he heard of this man who was almost synonymous with victory. Over the years, he naturally came to believe that Manchester United and Ferguson were an unbreakable unit, and he couldn't even imagine what Manchester United would be like without Ferguson. Beckham noticed that not only he, but the other players on the team also seemed listless during the training session the next day. Brian Kidd simply can't manage the team, he can't manage either the veteran players or the young players. Even a mid-career player like Keane would criticize him if he didn't perform well, and after just 2 training sessions, the Manchester United assistant coach's mentality collapsed. Most of the Manchester United players are very individualistic, and no one except Ferguson can control them. When Ferguson reappeared at the training ground the following afternoon, Beckham saw Brian Kidd breathe a sigh of relief. When the old man was around, his assistant, who was wearing a tiger skin, didn't seem to have anything special about him. When the team was in turmoil, Beckham realized that the team could not do without his head coach. The bigwigs on the club's board of directors didn't seem to see these things, or perhaps they didn't want to see them. He had seen several times in the Manchester Evening News reports about these board members going to France for coffee in the morning, sunbathing on an island in the afternoon, and attending lavish banquets in the evening. They only care about how much bonus they will receive at the end of the year and how the club's reputation is in the media. If a team fails to win a championship, their first thought is that the head coach has caused the loss. Then they think, change the head coach, and the championship will come back. This is what is meant by the contempt of meat-eaters. To Beckham's amusement and exasperation, Ferguson made a brief appearance in front of everyone and then stayed in his office and refused to come out. He guessed that the old man had also seen the media reports, so the first thing he did upon returning from France was to come back and stabilize morale before catching up on sleep. Beckham is eager to know if Manchester United will make any signings next. Will Kanchelskis stay or leave? Even while at Manchester United, Beckham didn't know more about transfer news than the outside world. Ferguson had very high requirements for the confidentiality of this kind of information. Only a few people were involved in the specific transfer operations, and most club personnel did not know about the team's purchases much earlier than the media. In the final week before the start of the league, transfer rumours about Manchester United were rampant, with all sorts of decent centre-forwards, defensive midfielders, and right-wingers being linked with the club. Among them, the most likely candidate is Ajax's Overmars, the winger who just won the Champions League trophy with Ajax. The media believes his potential surpasses that of Manchester United's strongest right winger, Kanchelskis, while Beckham is currently not in the public eye. Beckham knew this rumour was probably unfounded. The old man once commented on the Dutchman in front of a crowd, "This kid plays well, but he has an old knee injury, so his athletic career will definitely be short." He didn't know whether these media outlets had been scammed by the people selling the information or were just trying to generate buzz. According to them, negotiations between Manchester United and Ajax have reached the final stage, and some media outlets have even detailed the transfer fee, player treatment, and medical examination schedule, making the news seem very credible. With 3 days to go before the start of the league, Manchester United remained silent, and the rumours finally proved unfounded. It was only then that Beckham realised his chance had come. All signs indicate that Manchester United will not consider signing a right winger, at least not before the winter transfer window. Ferguson rarely spends money on players he considers ambiguous. Manchester United had previously targeted Tottenham's Anderton, and the England international had even expressed his interest in the media, but at the last minute he chose to renew his contract with Tottenham. This result caught Ferguson somewhat off guard, but he didn't choose to make hasty decisions. He preferred to give opportunities to youth players rather than waste money. Another sign that the club is not planning to make any signings is that he and Philippe Neville have remained in the first team since the pre-season, and the two of them have taken up all the playing time on the right wing, leaving no time for others to gel. As for Kanchelskis, that guy's interest in gambling now far outweighs his interest in playing football. Unfortunately, he was tricked by an acquaintance, losing all his savings and accumulating a huge debt to the casino. Ferguson warned him and gave him chances, but the guy got deeper and deeper into trouble, eventually leading to gangsters coming to the training ground to collect debts and triggering the hairdryer incident, which marked the end of his time at Manchester United. The reason the team hasn't sold him yet is entirely because his public image has collapsed, and many teams are hesitant to take him on due to his high salary. Even if the sale of the Ukrainian failed, Ferguson would not reuse him. Based on Beckham's careful observation over the years, once Ferguson decides to give up on a player, he will never give him another chance. He would rather let Kanchelskis rot in the reserves than give him another chance. This idea made Beckham grin from ear to ear all day long. With two people competing for the right winger position, he was definitely going to be the starter. After all, Phil is only 18 years old, he's still a child. Although he is really talented, he is too soft-hearted. As a professional player, being kind-hearted is not always a plus. So, the older brother naturally has to take the lead. With 2.5 days to go before the match, Beckham was already listening intently for any developments. The old man had a habit: if a player trained hard, he would always find a way to give them a chance. Even if they don't give the opposing team a starting opportunity, they will explain the reasons to the player individually. Manchester United will be playing away in the first round of the league, so they need to leave a day earlier. At the normal pace, the starting lineup should be announced tomorrow morning. So if the old man has something to say to Phil, he has to take action this afternoon. After all, Phil is still a child, so it's better not to put too much pressure on him. He's only 18 years old. Even though the two are rivals, Beckham still treats Philip Neville as his younger brother. Of course, competition is still necessary. As the only male in the family, he must shoulder the responsibility of supporting his family. The Neville family has 2 boys. Gary is basically the team's starting right back, so it's not a big deal for him to be a brother-supporting demon. Phil should just accept being his substitute, he'll definitely be treated well. After the afternoon training session ended, Ferguson walked over to Phil Neville. As expected, it happened. I hope this little guy can bravely face the adult world. Ferguson approached Philip Neville, the two whispered a few words to each other, and then parted ways. So fast. No, the old man wasn't looking for Phil, but... Beckham saw Ferguson walking towards him and immediately sensed something was wrong. Could it be that I'm going to be that kid substitute? Don't come here. Don't come here. Beckham silently thought to himself. David, come to my office in a bit. I think we haven't had a proper chat in a while. What are we talking about? Why at a time like this? Who wants to talk to you? Yes, sir. Beckham responded with a smile, awkward yet polite. Luckily, I didn't reveal my inner thoughts just now, otherwise I would have been proven wrong in a flash. End of this chapter. Chapter 8: The People on the Beam. Beckham showered and dressed in the locker room before going to Ferguson's office, wanting to hear the old man's opinion of him. From the outside, the office is nothing special. But anyone who steps into his office will know that it is frighteningly large enough for half a team to stand in a row and experience his hairdryer. Beckham recalled the moment when he was 13 years old and first walked into Ferguson's office, where the old man had startled him at the Cliff training ground. He thought the red-nosed man in front of him might be a caveman, because the office was just too big. As he drifted off into thought, Ferguson's voice came from inside the door, "The door's open, come in." Beckham walked into the office with some trepidation. The furnishings were not luxurious. Just by looking at the mahogany tables and leather chairs, one could tell that the office owner was a stubborn man who did not want to be manipulated. "Boss, what can I do for you?" Beckham tried to appear as casual as possible, but he felt inexplicably uncomfortable whenever he was alone with Ferguson. He tried to appear more mature, but it seemed he hadn't succeeded. He felt the old man's intimidating presence making him feel a little unsteady on his feet. "David, relax. I think you need to be assured that you're one of the few players who can't be criticized. Giving a top rating right off the bat, old man, are you serious?" Beckham sniffed lightly. The old man hasn't been drinking, he should still be sober. If the old man wasn't too drunk, this evaluation is far more significant than a starting position in a match. Compared to the old man's affirmation, those few tens of minutes of playing time are nothing. This thought helped Beckham regain his composure. A professional player should cultivate confidence from every angle. "I am very happy to receive your recognition. It reminds me of when I was 13 years old and signed my first professional contract with the pen you gave me. Being able to come here again today makes me feel like my childhood dream is about to come true." Beckham delivered the prepared compliments, emphasizing that praise and humility are the bonds between people, and everyone enjoys hearing kind words. These seemingly ordinary but pleasant compliments pleased Ferguson greatly. "David, I think your work ethic during the preseason deserves recognition. You've earned the respect of the entire club through your actions." Ferguson seemed to be in a good mood, although he still spoke loudly, his tone was noticeably softer. You could see that for a moment, the old man's eyes were full of tenderness, as if his words had stirred up a memory of a certain time in his mind. "David, I'm sorry. You've always worked very hard, but after careful consideration, I'm not going to start you in the next game. Yes, I found out half an hour ago. I'm not a virgin." Having prepared himself mentally, Beckham was able to respond naturally. "Thank you for telling me all this. I feel that if I keep working hard, one day I can become an indispensable part of the team. I am a Manchester native." Beckham's attitude and wording were very effective. He noticed a noticeable upturn at the corners of the old man's mouth. His attitude of seeing himself as a piece of the team's puzzle, and his sunny smile, seemed to illuminate a soft spot in the old man's heart. "David, you've been working really well this month, you seem to have endless energy. But I think you should take it easy, you haven't had a break for a month now, sometimes you should let yourself relax a bit. See? The old man is still paying attention to me. He started Phil in this game, maybe he wants him to do some dirty work. Wait until the opponent is exhausted, then let me go in for a final push and finish them off." Beckham imagined Ferguson's words. Everything in life can be a source of confidence, a self-motivation method he learned from Gary Neville. "I will take a break, but I feel that I am in good condition and have made some progress. Since he's no longer in the starting lineup, I wonder if the old man will put himself on the roster." Rather than watching the live broadcast at home, Beckham preferred to sit on the bench and wait to come on, since that position was just a step away from the pitch. "I agree with you. I have always believed that being a member of Manchester United is an honor, and players who are qualified to play for the team should give their all every moment. I was born into a working-class family, and even now, I am proud to be a member of the working class. Hard work and perseverance are qualities that the working class is proud of." Ferguson's words made Beckham involuntarily look up at a portrait on the office wall. In the painting, 11 workers were having lunch on a steel beam 100 meters above the ground, calmly enjoying their afternoon in what appeared to be a perilous situation. This portrait, which occupies almost half a wall, is a photograph created during the construction of Rockefeller Center in New York in 1932. It is called The People on the Beams, and is also known as Lunchtime in Manhattan. All Manchester United players felt that the portrait was a reflection of Ferguson's inner world. This Scotsman, born into a working-class family, makes no secret of his humble origins and has always been proud of them. Even now that he is the manager of a Premier League champion team, he still considers himself a member of the working class. Beckham felt that the portrait had been imbued with magic, and whenever he saw it, he always felt an urge to give his all for his career. He even forgot to tease the old man about being a wealthy working-class man who owned horses. Ferguson was pleased to see Beckham so engrossed in the portrait. His tone was very firm. "Football never lies. You reap what you sow, as long as you give it your all, you will become a part of the team. In other words, I'm not good enough yet. Beckham caught the hidden message in that statement. I didn't put you in the starting lineup for the first game, and I hope you won't be discouraged by that. I put Phil in the starting lineup because the opponent's wingers are very aggressive, Steve can't play, and I hope to use Phil's athleticism to make up for the lack of athleticism in the defense. I hope you can understand that. I knew it. Phil was part of the vanguard of the Siege Army. In TV shows, characters like that usually only survive one episode, the real protagonist would never appear at that point. I understand, boss. Thank you for your honesty. I believe that position will be mine sooner or later. Now that the compliments and nice words have been said, it's time to show your determination. When Phil sacrifices himself, send me to charge into the enemy lines. After praising himself for so long, the old man should at least give him a substitute spot to make it look good. You're right, that's why I put you on the roster. If it turns out my plan was wrong, I'll send you out to play. Hopefully, you can prove yourself right then. Well, that completes the entire conversation process, and it was a conversation that satisfied both parties. Beckham nodded, making sure his smile wasn't too exaggerated. Ferguson was not a stubborn person, he bravely expressed his innermost thoughts, but his tone remained assertive, and no one could make him back down. The somewhat delicate conversation ended positively, and Ferguson relaxed. David, I hope you understand that I have high expectations for you. Some people are born to play football. Even though they don't have enviable talent, they can still achieve great things and make those so-called geniuses feel ashamed. Lee Sharp was one of the most talented kids I've ever seen in years, it's just a shame he was a fool. He played a few good games and then turned his attention to alcohol and women, so now Ryan has taken his place. The world is never short of geniuses, but very few can have their names inscribed in the Hall of Fame. I hope you can remember what I said today. Ferguson was in the middle of a lively conversation when he regretfully told Beckham that he had missed out on two kids. There was a kid with a sour face who had the footwork of an adult at the age of 14, and another kid who came to try out and could dribble past people like the wind. It's a shame those two foolish kids chose that damn Liverpool, their father's judgment was a million miles worse than Ted's. Beckham knew that the children Ferguson was referring to were Gerrard and Owen. One player, Michael Owen, left a deep impression on him. The young man once made Manchester United's defenders question their existence in a youth team match. Another young man had a very powerful shot, and his long-range shot that scored made Gary burst into a string of curses from the stands. Ferguson then criticized Lee Sharp's taste in women. He has never been discerning about women, like a pig about to be bred. David, I think you should have strict aesthetic standards. I thought your previous girlfriend was pretty good, but she clearly lacked confidence. I think you should find a woman who matches you, and definitely don't get involved with those lousy girl groups. If you could get your hands on that French beauty, every man in France would be green with envy, that would be amazing. Forgive my shallowness, but just thinking about it is so exciting, ha ha ha. Why did the old man suddenly steer the style off course? Beckham was speechless. He discovered that as soon as the conversation turned away from football, Ferguson transformed into an unserious and amusing old man. The interview ended in a pleasant atmosphere, and Beckham felt he should practice his free kicks more so that he could show everyone his value as soon as possible. He pushed open the office door, heard a bang, and then saw Bart clutching his head, like a thief caught red-handed, scrambling and crawling towards the crowd not far away. The Neville brothers, Giggs, and Scholes were standing over there. David, can't you be a little gentler? You're going to give me a concussion. Bart was caught sneaking along the wall, and before Beckham could say anything, he turned around and accused Beckham. Gary Neville quickly covered his mouth, glancing around the head coach's office as he muttered under his breath, "Keep your voice down, are you out of your mind?" A group of people pulled Beckham away from the office and asked him what Ferguson had just said to him. Beckham told everyone the truth, and everyone wore expressions that said, "Don't be sad. David, can't we just face this shitty life like real men?" As Gary Neville spoke, he lifted Beckham's face, trying to find traces of tears on his skin. Ferguson has been in a bad mood lately and likes to yell at people in the office, so everyone subconsciously assumed that Beckham had been disciplined by the old man. Most of his experiences in the office involved hair dryers. Few people could endure such a long time, or rather, the old man would hardly let them off the hook unless they shed some crocodile tears. The old man wouldn't stop until he cursed people until they cried. Seeing that Beckham didn't seem to enjoy the hairdryer at all, the other's enthusiasm clearly waned. Giggs suddenly remembered the first time he saw a hairdryer. It was a Monday. Lee Sharp was having a party at his house, and the old man somehow found out and cornered us at the front door in the middle of the night. We were given the hairdryer treatment twice in less than 12 hours. The guy wouldn't back down, so the old man gave up on him after that. Giggs is still shaken by the incident, which almost cost him the trust of his head coach. I think I'm innocent. I didn't drink that day, and I was on my way home when the old man bumped into me. That was Beckham's only party experience, and it's said that Ferguson later interpreted that unpleasant memory as Lee Sharp trying to blackmail him with young players and embarrass him. Given the old man's fierce personality, it's a miracle that Lee Sharp hasn't been kicked out yet, which means he's really played well. Beckham glanced at Philip Neville. The days when this little guy would be everyone's shadow were probably numbered. Since that's the case, we should take advantage of the moment and make use of him for a while longer. Phil, go to the locker room and get my shoes, I want to kick them a couple more times. Gary Neville. It's only a short walk, why should I order my brother around? End of this chapter. Chapter 9 The Ultimate Formation. With the league season approaching, Beckham realized that the old man might not even be able to field the same rotation squad as last season. Manchester United lost 3 key players in the summer, and their main striker Cantona is currently suspended, which has significantly weakened the team. Meanwhile, Giggs, Cole, and Bruce were unable to play in the first round of the league due to injuries, making the already weak squad look even more stretched. To make matters worse, Ferguson failed to secure any strong foreign players for the team. Not only did a strong player like Anderton not come to join, but several French players introduced by Cantona also showed no interest in Manchester, which is often plagued by cold and rain. As the new season was about to start, Manchester United did not sign any strong reinforcements. It wouldn't be accurate to say that Ferguson didn't buy any players, he bought a whole bunch of kids. These youth team prospects are certainly not ready for the first team yet. Only one adult player, Nicky Kin, joined the team, costing Manchester United £250,000. This name is unfamiliar to you too? That's right, even the authoritative media in the transfer market couldn't figure out which crotch this big shot came from. Shabby Ferguson bought a flop, he doesn't even know how to spend money on lottery tickets. The media ridiculed him, highlighting Manchester United's predicament. In contrast to Manchester United, Blackburn Rovers' success spurred ambitions among club owners. Beyond Manchester United, the Premier League began attracting more star players. Chelsea's acquisition of Gullit from AC Milan, coupled with Linksman's move to Tottenham, signifies that the Premier League is increasingly able to attract star players. Besides defending champions Blackburn Rovers, Liverpool, who had a surge of young talents last season, and Newcastle United, who made big money signings, are also major threats to Manchester United. Newcastle United, in particular, under the impetus of manager Keegan's ambitious team-building plan, acquired a plethora of star players, creating a super squad. Betting companies no longer consider Manchester United the top favorite to win the title this season, they're not even second or third. On the betting odds of multiple bookmakers, Manchester United could only pitifully occupy the 4th or even 5th place in the odds of winning the title. Even die-hard Manchester United fans couldn't convince themselves that Manchester United would definitely win the title. When announcing the starting lineup, the old man deployed a 3-5-2 formation that no one was familiar with, and placed the imposing Gary Neville in the middle of the 3 centre-backs. David, I feel a little guilty. On the bus to the away game, Gary Neville leaned his head toward Beckham and covered his mouth with his hand as he spoke. When the starting lineup was announced this morning, you were the one who jumped the highest. Now you're telling me you're weak. I can't take kidney tonics. Whether you are weak or not, your opponent will treat you the same way. Beckham thinks it's a bit pitiful that Gary Neville is doomed today. But I'm even more pathetic, I didn't even get the chance to be abused. Gary Neville shrugged. The boss has already arranged it for me. It's better to stand between those 2 old guys than to get beaten up on the side. Beckham laughed and said, then what do you have to worry about? You have Roy and Phil in front of you, and Nicky can also help out. The game might be a little ugly, but as long as we hold on in the first half, the pressure will shift to them. You have a point, but I'm not counting on Nicky. I'll be grateful if he doesn't make things worse. Seeing Gary Neville gradually regain his confidence by stepping on his own steps, Beckham felt that he had done his job. However, today's match cannot be won with just a little confidence. Everyone knows very well that Manchester United's first-round opponent, Aston Villa, will not give them any chance to gel. Aston Villa is one of the many clubs that have spent a lot of money on players this season, although their spending is not as eye-catching as Chelsea's, nor as luxurious as Newcastle United's squad. However, judging from the odds offered by major betting companies for winning the championship, they have received support second only to Manchester United. These odds suggest that even if Aston Villa's chances of winning the title are slim, the gap between them and Manchester United will not be too large by the end of the season. In other words, the two teams are evenly matched in overall strength. However, to say that the two teams are evenly matched based on the odds of winning the championship is to deceive yourself. After Ferguson cleared out the starting lineup, he failed to strengthen it. The team's key player was suspended, and several key players were injured. There were simply not enough players of sufficient quality to form a starting lineup. He could only put 4 youth academy players around 20 years old in the starting lineup, and the 3 players on the bench were also youth academy graduates. Manchester United's squad is clearly weaker than their opponents on paper. Even if Manchester United field their strongest lineup, they might not be able to beat their opponents at Villa Park, especially with 4 key players missing, plus Cantona still serving a suspension. Manchester United's starting lineup is missing almost half of its key players. The worried Manchester United team remained silent on the bus. After arriving in Birmingham, they only had 1 hour to adapt to the pitch, which is enough for a professional team, but the team seemed to lack a sense of security. After dinner, the Manchester United players all returned to their hotel rooms. At this point, if they dared to wander around, they would be ridiculed by the media if they lost tomorrow's game. Beckham shared a room with Gary Neville, who kicked everyone else out of the room early on. At this moment, he wanted some peace and quiet. The two lay in bed, chatting idly, neither paying attention to what was playing on the television. The only purpose of a television is to make the atmosphere seem a little more lively. Just after 10:30, the room lights were turned off. Sleep is the best way to de-stress. But the prerequisite is being able to fall asleep. Gary Neville, who is usually carefree, tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep until midnight. Hearing Beckham's even breathing not far away, he suddenly had a wicked thought: if I can't sleep, neither can you. So he threw the pillow at Beckham's head. Unawakened. David, why are you asleep? Can we talk? There was no response. So he picked up the pillow and threw it at the other person again. Are you out of your mind? Why are you messing with me? Ahem, I say, Mr. David, please don't be so heartless, okay? Can't we talk about this tomorrow? Beckham was woken up, still grumpy from being woken up, and spoke in a very unfriendly tone. It's already tomorrow, sir. Gary Neville said in a sly, ingratiating tone. Beckham couldn't do anything with him, so he could only chat with him despite being sleepy. David, do you still remember the Toulon tournament? Nonsense, that happened months ago. I haven't lost my memory. Can't you be a little nicer and gentler? By the way, what place did we get again? We finished 4th and were eliminated by France in the semi-finals. You were angered by their arrogant attitude at the end of the match and encouraged us to beat up that kid named Pires in the players' tunnel. Seeing that Beckham was in a coherent train of thought, Gary Neville turned on the light and took out a bottle of whiskey from his suitcase. How about having a drink with me? I swear, just one. A little drink is better than not being able to sleep. Beckham shielded his eyes from the light and glared at Neville, saying menacingly, if you dare touch alcohol, I'll expose you tomorrow. At the pre-match press conference, questions from the media were thrown at Ferguson like javelins, with reporters showing no respect for the champion manager who had previously won 2 consecutive Premier League titles. Manchester United did nothing before the season. Are they preparing to give up on the title this season? Is Manchester United facing a club crisis? Why haven't they made any investments? Ferguson, have you lost support and the trust of the club's management, so you don't have the money to buy players? Manchester United's management did not help relieve the pressure on the manager. They dumped all the problems on Ferguson. Ferguson was so angry at these idiotic questions that he laughed in exasperation. Why can't Manchester United win the championship? Do you think you can decide the championship? Instead of discussing football with you idiots, I'd rather watch some horse racing highlights. No chance of winning the championship. We'll see. Why didn't they add any players? Because Manchester United already has a group of excellent young players. The best players are already in the team, so why would they need to buy more? Alright, ladies, I'm leaving. You can keep chatting away. On August 19, 1995, in the Sky Sports studio, football commentators were unabashedly mocking Manchester United's starting lineup. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new season of the Premier League. I am your old friend, Martin Tyler. Please allow me to reveal the starting lineups for both sides. Let's take a look at Manchester United's starting lineup first. Their formation is 3-5-2. I wonder when was the last time they used this formation in the league? Aha! The funniest part is yet to come. Let's take a look at Manchester United's lineup. Their three centre-backs are Pallister, Gary Neville, and Paul Parker. I think if I were put in Aston Villa's centre-forward position, I could score 2 headers. Come on, this little guy is too short. Their 5 midfielders are Philip Neville, Nicky Butt, Roy Keane, Lee Sharp, and Irwin. The 2 forwards are McClare and Scholes, and wow, they put Scholes up front. Can anyone tell me what kind of monstrous lineup Manchester United has fielded? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Someone is bullying Gary. Beckham sat in the stands at Villa Park, with green grass in front of him and Manchester United fans all around him. He waited with the fans for his team to come on. I started playing football when I was 3 years old, not to sit in the front row and watch others play. Beckham sat awkwardly in the crowd, a feeling stronger than ever before. With Kanchelskis already relegated to the sidelines, Manchester United are practically left with only him as a legitimate right winger. Phil had always played right back, but Gary Neville couldn't grow tall enough to play centre-back in the senior team, so he successfully transitioned to the centre-back position, displacing the original starter, Paul Parker. If Philip Neville, who has never played right winger in an official match, can establish himself in that position, then he can basically find his own way in the game. Beckham has no age advantage over Philippe Neville. At 20 years old, being a substitute for an 18-year-old means he'll never make it at Manchester United. With Beckham in a somewhat anxious mood, his teammates came into view. Each Manchester United player walked onto the pitch at a leisurely pace, accompanied by a child. As their team entered the field, Manchester United fans in the away stands let out a gasp of surprise. They found their team wearing a confusing grey kit, Umbro's new season away kit, in a dark grey hue. Why are they wearing those damn grey jerseys? That color is just awful. I almost thought I was in the wrong stadium. What is that team in the grey jerseys? Whenever I come to the stadium, I will only wear a red jersey. Let these jerseys go to hell. Even the most die-hard Manchester United fans were shocked to see their team wearing a khaki-colored kit. Looking at his teammates in their drab grey outfits, and then at his own clothes, Beckham chuckled self-deprecatingly. This outfit is absolutely hideous. Does the sponsor have a problem with the club? To come up with such an awful uniform. Shut up. We're here to watch the game, not to criticize that damn grey team. As long as it's Manchester United, we should cheer for them. Let's sing together. The chaos lasted only a moment, and soon the battle-hardened fans organized themselves to sing the team song, Glory to Manchester United. Brian, I just feel like this damn grey looks a bit off. I think we should choose a different color for our away jerseys. Grey is so damn depressing. Ferguson chewed his gum and grumbled indignantly. Boss, isn't this formation a bit risky? If we change the formation now, we can just have Dennis, Irwin, pull back. They should be very familiar with this tactic. Brian Kidd is still hesitant about this tactic, clearly believing that the traditional 4-4-2 is more reliable and that the team won't have to bear extra pressure even if the team's performance is poor. Manchester United's assistant coach was still a little worried about this squad that didn't have much match experience. As the second in command of the team's coaching staff, he was entitled to offer advice to the head coach, and in fact, he did so. Ferguson was still chewing his gum, his eyes fixed on the pitch. Brian, didn't we discuss this? The 4-4-2 formation lacks structure. Although these kids have played some games, they still easily get flustered. Having the veterans around will benefit them. This is why Ferguson placed Gary Neville between the two veteran players. Another reason for this lineup is rather awkward. Apart from Keane and Lee Sharp, who are both 24 years old and in their prime. The rest of the players are either old men in their 30s or young lads in their 20s. The young, energetic players may be able to run and jump, but they lack experience and are more fragile mentally, making them a potential weakness for the team on the field. The veteran players are clearly seasoned veterans who have weathered many storms, and no matter who their opponents are, they cannot be intimidated. However, they also have weaknesses. As they get older, their athletic performance gradually declines, and it becomes difficult for them to defend against Villa's black players one-on-one. Ferguson's biggest hope now is to let both the veteran players and the young players play to their strengths and make up for each other's weaknesses. Ferguson fielded this strange starting lineup not because he was stubborn, but because it was the best solution he could theoretically come up with. No one expected that the team would be missing nearly half of its key players before the season even started. Brian Kidd wanted to say something, but seeing that Ferguson had no intention of discussing it with him, he mustered his courage several times, but finally gave up. Ferguson leaned back in his chair, observing the situation on the field as he said, "Brian, sometimes you have to think from the decision-maker's perspective. If one day you become the head of a team, remember my words, never let the team panic in crucial moments. Even if one decision is wrong, if the whole team resolutely carries it out, the opponent will have no chance of winning. All formations serve the collective good, nothing can supersede the collective good." Brian Kidd nodded without saying a word, trying to focus on the court to hide his embarrassment. A single comment from the head coach made him blush. With Captain Bruce absent, Schmeichel became the temporary captain. He gathered his teammates together, clapping loudly and shouting, "Guys, I know you've been waiting impatiently. Let's teach these scumbags a lesson, beat them down, scare them, and show them who's boss." Amidst the heart-wrenching cheers at Villa Park, the Manchester United players walked onto the pitch. Beckham was so engrossed in the fans section that his emotions resonated with theirs that his thoughts became somewhat disjointed. He has been paying close attention to his teammates' performance, especially those who joined the youth academy in the same year as him. Gary Neville acted like a veteran player. He first patted Pallister on the shoulder, chatted with him for a few words with a smile, and then walked over to Parker, just like a general boosting the team's morale. Seeing the other person's shameless appearance, Beckham laughed. Gary was his best friend, and seeing this carefree guy not at all intimidated, he was genuinely happy for him. Gary Neville walked toward Schmeichel and extended his hand to him. What happened next made him laugh out loud. Gary's pretentious and arrogant manner instantly enraged Schmeichel. Schmeichel, known as the Great Dane, kept moving his mouth. He grabbed Gary Neville's chin, his gloved hand enveloping half of the man's face, followed by a burst of roars. Even from dozens of meters away, Beckham could feel Gary Neville's embarrassed expression after being sprayed with spittle. Before Gary Neville could react, Schmeichel spun him around halfway, then grabbed him by the neck and shoved him forward violently. Gary Neville waited until he had some distance from Schmeichel, then turned around and waved his arm vigorously at him, as if trying to communicate. This is what they call talking nonsense when things are going well, and reasoning when things are going badly. Compared to Gary Neville, Philip Neville appeared somewhat reserved. While waiting for the kickoff, he stood in one place for almost the entire time and did not communicate with his teammates. "Phil, get up and move around. Stop standing there like an idiot." If Phil is matched up against an experienced player who takes the ball aggressively the first time he gets it, he might suffer a muscle strain right at the start of the game. Of course, Phil's departure wasn't necessarily a bad thing for him. Cough cough, thinking like that doesn't seem quite right. We should be more positive and less negative. Bart was a bit better. After high-fiving Keane, he kept jumping around, acting just as much as Gary Neville. The slender Scholes kept an eye on his opponent not far away, a habit he had always maintained. Compared to his teammates who motivate themselves, he prefers to take the time to observe the opponents, predict the defender's playing style and ball handling habits, so as to adapt to the game more quickly. With the referee's whistle, Manchester United officially began their new season. As soon as Aston Villa kicked off from the halfway line, the home fans erupted in deafening cheers. Beckham felt they were about to unleash all the energy they had been holding back during the off-season. Aston Villa's midfielder received the ball but didn't rush forward. Instead, he passed the ball back to the backfield. Scholes made a desperate run forward to challenge the defender, and Villa's centre-back passed the ball to the right wing. Lee Sharp failed to follow up in time, giving the opponent ample time to regroup. Get it up there quickly. Keane's shrill voice still carried through the stadium of tens of thousands of people. Even Beckham, sitting in the stands, could hear him. Lee Sharpe finally caught up, but he had already missed the best opportunity to press. Aston Villa's right-back kicked the ball hard into Manchester United's penalty area. Aston Villa striker Milosevic charged into the penalty area, braced himself against Gary Neville's face with his arm, and advanced like a tank. Gary Neville seemed to have little chance against the Yugoslavian centre-forward who was half a head taller than him. He tried his best to hold on, but was still pushed back. "That's a foul, are you guys blind?" Seeing the opposing centre bullying his own players in this way, Ferguson immediately stood up from his seat and roared at the field. End of this chapter. Chapter 11. A younger brother is still a younger brother after all. Milosevic then used his power advantage to intimidate his opponents, and once they lost control of their emotions, the match became much easier. This is how all centres deal with shorter centre-backs. Milosevic's action successfully stirred up the emotions of the home team fans, and the entire stadium, except for the away team stands, was ablaze with excitement. Just as Aston Villa fans thought the first goal was about to be scored, the referee blew his whistle. Even though the Premier League is known for its high-octane games and aggressive play, Milosevic's actions still went too far. Upon hearing the referee's whistle, Gary Neville shoved his opponent. Caught off guard, Milosevic staggered back a few steps before coming to a stop. He immediately turned and walked towards Gary Neville. "You fucking try touching me again." The 22-year-old Villa striker is a typical Slavic, with a fiery temper and a short fuse. "Who the hell do you think you are, you idiot?" Gary Neville is not afraid of clashing with physically strong players at all. If such a scene intimidated him, he would not have stayed at Manchester United. "Well done, Gary, get him." Beckham tried to walk to the sidelines, but Ferguson glared at him and pulled him back. Gary Neville shoved Milosevic again, and the Yugoslavian centre-forward, enraged, immediately wrestled with Neville, using his superior strength to push him back several steps. Gary Neville was no delicate flower. He fought and retreated to maintain his balance, then suddenly turned to the side to let Milosevic pass. Using the momentum of Milosevic's forward charge, he used his hands and feet to push Milosevic down and pin him to the ground. Villa fans were completely dumbfounded. Hadn't their Slavic lad come 7 times yesterday? How could he have been so easily pinned to the ground by a skinny guy? Players from both teams rushed forward. The first Aston Villa player to charge pushed Gary Neville to the ground. Milosevic got up and was about to charge at him when Keane rushed up and pushed him away, blocking several other eager Villa players. The two teams were in chaos, with purple and grey mixed together like a pot of porridge. The referee did not approach the scene of the incident, but instead chose a better vantage point to observe the players from both teams. Several highly respected players from both teams quickly stepped forward and quelled the incident. The referee called the captains of both teams and the perpetrator to his side, and then said slowly and deliberately, "This is not a repeat of what happened. If it happens again, I will send you both off. Shake hands now and return to your seats." Gary Neville solemnly extended his hand, while Milosevic reluctantly swallowed the loss. In their first encounter, Gary Neville emerged victorious. Less than 10 minutes after the game restarted, Ferguson, who had been in high spirits just moments before, suddenly turned grim. The opponent's centre-forward and left winger are both formidable players, and they are matched up against the Neville brothers, Manchester United's Achilles heel in this match. Gary Neville might be able to go toe-to-toe with Milosevic in a fight, but on the football field, he can't withstand this strong opponent in terms of either height or strength. Gary Neville, who joined the senior team, was really struggling in the centre-back position. Philip Neville, however, greatly disappointed Ferguson. Phil is as fragile as a rag doll against strong wingers. Aston Villa's tactics were very targeted, with all attacks starting from Philip Neville's side and then heading straight for Milosevic's head. Manchester United appeared somewhat disorganized under the strong pressure from their opponents, with everyone busy cleaning up after Philip Neville. This was the first time in Philip Neville's career that he faced a strong black winger on the wing. The opponent was no slower than him, and his agility advantage was completely ineffective. In the 14th minute, Aston Villa's winger and midfielder executed a skillful 1-2 pass, with Philip Neville attempting to mark his opponent but being easily pushed aside. Manchester United's right flank was immediately torn apart. Aston Villa's left winger crossed the ball before Parker could cover, and Gary Neville was outmaneuvered by Milosevic, leaving the Yugoslavian player one-on-one with the goalkeeper. At this moment, Keane, who was chasing back, rushed forward desperately. Risking injury, he made a diving tackle when he was still a few meters away from the ball. He didn't tackle the ball, but Milosevic was prevented from kicking it due to his interference. Pallister turned around with difficulty to look at the ball, but because he turned too slowly, he watched helplessly as the ball bounced off the ground and passed by him. The ball flew to the left side of Manchester United's penalty area. Aston Villa's right winger dribbled the ball, drawing Pallister out, and then passed it to the centre. Milosevic's black winger, Taylor, rushed up and swept the ball into the net. Yes. Manchester United conceded a goal after holding on for 14 minutes, and Aston Villa fans started chanting and booing the Manchester United players with the ball. The troubles had only just begun. Manchester United held on for 10 minutes before conceding another goal. The breakthrough came from Philip Neville. He was too nervous. Aston Villa's left winger dribbled the ball directly towards Philip Neville, dragging him a few meters before accelerating again and crossing from the byline. Milosevic received the ball in the middle and, without stopping, flicked it to the left. The Aston Villa player, who had caught up, was one-on-one with Schmeichel and easily pushed the ball into the far corner of the goal. 2-0, Aston Villa scored 2 goals against last season's runners-up in less than half an hour. After the restart, the confident Aston Villa players slowed down the pace, but the stadium announcer wasn't having it. He kept fanning the flames over the loudspeaker. The opposing goalkeeper has never conceded more than 2 goals in the Premier League. What are we waiting for? Let's rewrite the record. His encouragement ignited the passion of the home fans, who at Villa Park began chanting, "Score one more. Score one more. Score one more." Encouraged by the fans, the Aston Villa players, who had relaxed somewhat, began to attack the away team's penalty area again. The game, which had started to become uneventful, suddenly sped up, and Manchester United's defense was under pressure once more. In the 37th minute, Aston Villa opened another gap on Philip Neville's side, with Taylor breaking through and immediately passing the ball to Milosevic. Manchester United's 3 centre-backs immediately tightened their grip, effectively shutting down Aston Villa's young striker. Milosevic, like a mad beast, took a huge step toward the penalty area with his back to Gary Neville. Just as he was trying to create an opening, Manchester United's right centre-back Parker rushed up and collided with the Yugoslavian. What happened next was surprising. Parker deliberately rammed into his opponent, but was bounced away. Milosevic seized the opportunity to break through the encirclement of 3 Manchester United defenders, turned and took a step toward the goal, then passed the ball to the left before Schmeichel could come out to intercept. Schmeichel tried desperately to touch the ball, knowing full well that if he let it slip past him, it would be over. However, he wasn't in good form today either. He not only failed to touch the ball but also tripped Milosevic. The referee blew his whistle, and it was an uncontested penalty. York stood in front of the penalty kick, took a run up from the left side of the ball, swung his left leg in front of the ball, and Schmeichel lunged to the left. Unexpectedly, York's left foot swung slightly and landed on the grass, while his right foot followed up to push the ball into the bottom left corner of the goal. 3-0. Parker acted like a preschooler in front of the opposing centre. After saying this, Ferguson shook his head helplessly. The game was already half over, and the only hope for a miracle was that they wouldn't lose to their opponents. Beckham, on the bench, felt a deep sense of loss for Philip Neville. Although the two are now competitors, he does not want to see this scenario unfold. Competitive sports are just too cruel, they don't give young people any time to adapt. Sigh, my brother is still my brother. End of this chapter. Chapter 12 Celestial Immortal. Watching his team concede 3 goals in less than 40 minutes, Beckham was in a state of high anxiety. He only sat in the first third of his seat, never expecting his brother to perform so poorly. "Brother, we've been playing together for 5 years, and I never imagined you'd be such a deep hole." Well. Beckham sat in the stands, all he could do was sigh. To be honest, Phil is a very talented young player. He has no weaknesses in terms of technique, awareness, and physical ability, especially in the 60-meter sprint, which is among the best of all the Manchester United players who have played. If he were a strong-willed person and used this ability in a simpler, more direct way, he might be standing on the European Championship stage next summer. It's a pity, a real pity. Beckham tried his best not to show his emotions on his face. Today's game was going to be broadcast live on Sky Sports, and dozens of cameras on the field were constantly capturing news. He didn't want to be taken out of context by the media. Manchester United are currently under intense scrutiny, with every detail on the pitch being magnified by the media. Manchester United, having conceded 3 goals, were unable to regain their fighting spirit through self-adjustment. If there had been no half-time break and the game had continued, Manchester United would certainly have continued to concede goals. They appeared very vulnerable in the last 5 minutes of the first half. Fortunately, Aston Villa, leading by 3 goals, lost their previous drive and did not extend their lead. As the whistle blew to end the first half, Beckham followed the coaching staff toward the locker room. He stopped at the player tunnel entrance, ready to encourage his teammates who had a poor first half. At that moment, Schmeichel walked over and said, "Hi, David." Schmeichel gave a brief greeting and walked straight into the players' tunnel without waiting for Beckham's response. "Peter, you made that penalty too easy for them." Roy Keane's face contorted with a fierce competitive spirit. He simply couldn't tolerate conceding a goal for no apparent reason. This statement sounded somewhat accusatory, but Schmeichel patiently explained, "Before that black kid took the penalty kick, I couldn't tell which foot was his dominant foot, so I could only go with my gut feeling. Doing something is better than doing nothing." Keane nodded, acknowledging his explanation. Keane joined the team 2 years later than Schmeichel and is 8 years younger than him, but he has a strong influence on the team. He can not only inspire the team's fighting spirit with his personal performance in the game, but also step up for his teammates at critical moments. He protected Gary Neville early in the game. Then his younger brother came over, his emotions on the verge of collapse, and Bart's reaction was no better. Gary Neville and Scholes also came over. Before Beckham could speak, Gary put on a look of impending doom. "My performance today was a disaster. The old man will praise Phil to death first, and then I will be next. Why does this guy always seem more resilient than others? Even when he can't stand up straight, he doesn't get discouraged by a bad performance." Although Gary Neville was constantly harassed by the opponent's attacking force throughout the first half, he played very tough. Especially after Manchester United conceded their 3rd goal, Milosevic tried to find a breakthrough by exploiting that weakness. As a result, Gary Neville slammed his tackle into his opponent's patella. The Slav, known for his temper and ferocity, narrowly escaped injury, and his first reaction was to complain to the referee. He chickened out. To rise up and fight back in the face of storms, that is Gary Neville's most powerful spiritual quality. Everyone quickly returned to the locker room. At this critical juncture, no one dared to provoke the old man. The locker room was unusually quiet, and everyone was in low spirits. Among the 4 academy players who started the game, 3 were very nervous. If they had to perform like this again, their Manchester United careers might be coming to an end. The only one who seemed relatively normal was Scholes. He wasn't nervous, just a little frustrated. He barely received any passes in the attacking third in the first half, and Manchester United's organization was completely disrupted by the opponent. Seeing the players' expressions of disappointment, fear, or self-blame, Ferguson smiled with relief. "Sometimes life is like that, it can't be perfect. We were down by 3 goals at halftime, but we can't let the shadow of defeat weigh us down. I need you to forget about the first half and look forward." Upon hearing Ferguson's words, all the Manchester United players felt as if they had been granted a pardon, and the atmosphere in the locker room became much more relaxed. Ferguson did not give specific tactical instructions, but only asked everyone to focus on the next game. Beckham agreed with the manager's approach. As a player himself, he could empathize with his teammates' feelings. When you're trailing by a large margin, harsh criticism will only further demoralize you. Instead of using a hairdryer, Ferguson patiently comforted the players, and the atmosphere in the locker room immediately changed. He made a quick adjustment, and Philip Neville was substituted at halftime. "I never expected to make my entrance in this way." Upon learning that he would be playing in the second half, Beckham felt both relieved and pressured. One can imagine how Aston Villa will treat the rookie when they learn that their opponent has fielded another new face. Manchester United substituted David Beckham for Philip Neville, who had a poor first half, but what was the point of that substitution? Was it just a gamble? Alex actually gave all his substitutes to young players. Even if he had put Andre on the bench, the game wouldn't have been so difficult. In the Sky Sports studio, Martin Tyler didn't think Manchester United could improve in the second half. The substitutes might perform even worse. If they can't handle the passing and receiving issues in time, Manchester United might suffer a humiliating defeat in the first round of the league. Let's see how the game goes first. David Beckham hasn't had many opportunities to play before, and he was even loaned out to a third-tier team at one point. He was the right winger for England's youth team at the Toulon tournament a few months ago, barely playing his old role in Ferguson's unusual formation. It must be said, he's a handsome young man, but good looks have little to do with professional league football. Before Beckham came on, Ferguson reminded him, "Don't lose your position, try to fight for every half ball. Always keep in touch with your teammates." Just as Beckham had anticipated, Aston Villa tried to find a way to break through him from the start, with the left winger named Taylor attempting to overpower him the first time he received the ball. Go to hell. Who the hell do you think you're messing with? The moment the thought crossed his mind, Beckham launched a tackle without warning. Taylor jumped up in fright. Beckham slid the ball out of bounds, and it hit the advertising board with a loud thud. Taylor glanced at the advertising board and, upon receiving the ball out of bounds, immediately passed it away as if the football were burning his foot. Good grief, he came out with a crippling kick right away. This young man is a hothead, that's for sure. I'm not going to do solo matches anymore, I still have a family to support. Sure enough, these days, the stubborn are afraid of the ruthless, and the ruthless are afraid of the reckless. Taylor then only played 1-2s, no longer daring to go one-on-one with Beckham. A few minutes later, York and Taylor executed a wall pass on the right. After seeing York pass the ball, Beckham started running without looking at the ball, quickly sticking close to York. Both of them made movement while running and fell down on the grass together. Gary Neville, who was covering, cleared the ball out of bounds. Well done, David. Ferguson clapped and encouraged Beckham as he came on. Beckham, having earned the manager's approval, was even more motivated than before, and he vigilantly observed the Villa attacking players in the defensive area. York believed the opponent had fouled on the ball, but the referee ignored it. This little incident immediately angered the home fans, and coupled with the vicious tackle, the home fans near the sideline began to hurl insults at Beckham in various ways. "Hee, don't stop if you don't mind getting tired. I love seeing you guys annoyed with me but unable to do anything about it." Beckham, with a playful expression, remained completely undisturbed by the outside world, focusing all his attention on the game. "You're already full of energy, and you're only playing for 45 minutes. If you've got the guts, come and play shuttle run with me." As Villa's wingers struggled more and more, Manchester United's right flank gradually improved. Aston Villa discovered Beckham's unpredictable and tenacious style of play, so they had to shift their focus to the right flank. Manchester United's two players on that side were Lee Sharpe and Irwin, both of whom are quite capable, but the home team still couldn't gain an advantage. As the game reached the 60th minute, Aston Villa's stamina began to decline, but Beckham continued to tirelessly run to disrupt the opponent's midfield. He was certain that his opponent was leading by 3 goals and had been unable to break through in the second half. As his physical condition deteriorated, he could only hope that the game would end as soon as possible. This is Manchester United's chance, they can't possibly get 3 goals down without any response. He and Keane, with their abundant energy, began to attack the opponent's defense, and Manchester United's attack slowly began to improve. In the 73rd minute, Irwin intercepted a pass from Aston Villa on the left wing. The moment he received the ball, Villa's defenders marked Keane. He is Manchester United's best player and deserves special treatment. At the same time, Lee Sharpe failed to shake off his Villa player with 2 consecutive changes of direction, and Irwin couldn't find a suitable passing position. Manchester United's counter-attack was about to fall through. "Dennis, give me the ball." Beckham broke free of the defender and ran into space, and Irwin immediately passed the ball to his teammate in the open position. The opportunity has arrived. Beckham received the ball and accelerated forward, with players from both teams sprinting towards Aston Villa's penalty area. Manchester United are on the counter-attack, and this opportunity is very valuable for them. This young man named David is dribbling forward, and now is a good time to pass the ball. He should know to leave important opportunities to the most confident players. Roy burst into the penalty area, "Pass the ball, kid." Beckham spotted Roy Keane, but the defenders around him were very close, and the angle between the two was not large, making it easy for the defenders to clear the pass halfway. You're already in the shooting zone, and there are no defenders around, so why not give it a try? An idea popped into Beckham's head and then became uncontrollable. So he followed his own instincts and glanced at the defensive players' positions. Aston Villa's centre-backs covered the far post, leaving the near post for themselves. The Villa goalkeeper was positioned near the right side of the goal, blocking the near post. It must be said that Aston Villa is indeed a strong team in the Premier League. Even when the opponent launches a counter-attack, they can immediately set up a very high-level defensive position. Now I have to use the outside of my right foot to get the ball around the defender and shoot it into the far corner. It was a bit difficult, but it was the only way to score. Go for it. Beckham instantly cleared his mind, then swung his leg forcefully and took a shot. Seeing Beckham prepare to shoot, commentator Martin Tyler said with a mixture of regret and sarcasm, "Impossible." Events seemed to confirm his prediction. After Beckham took the shot, the ball flew towards the left side of the stands. However, the upward trend doesn't seem to be going smoothly, it's as if it's being suppressed. Then, something astonishing happened. After reaching a certain height, the football suddenly plummeted towards the goal with obvious sidespin, finally flying into the net just past the goalpost. Goal! The angle of that shot was incredible, and Villa Park fell silent for a moment. That guy's a heavy artilleryman. My God, it's unbelievable. This kid named David kicked a shot with a bizarre curve. Let's take another look at the slow-motion replay. Clearly, the technique of this shot was very skillful. This kid didn't leave his fate to God at the moment of the shot. A brilliant goal, but the situation remains difficult for Manchester United. From the moment Beckham took the shot until the goal, the Aston Villa goalkeeper defended with his eyes the entire time, even standing there dumbfounded after the goal. This goal split the home crowd for the first time. Most people gasped in amazement, some applauded Beckham, and a small group of Aston Villa diehards continued to boo. Keane rushed into the goal, retrieved the ball, and turned to run towards the center line. O'Kane, who had just come on, rushed over excitedly and hugged Beckham, but the latter did not celebrate and turned to run towards the center line. We're still down by 2 goals, what's there to hold on to? Let's hurry up and kick off. Ferguson's face turned red with excitement. He chewed gum to calm himself down while staring at Beckham. Once he felt composed, he said to Brian Kidd beside him, "It turns out I should have started David." End of this chapter. Chapter 13. You can't win anything by relying on children. Beckham pulled one back, and the die-hard fans who traveled to the away game firmly believed that this would be the start of the team's all-out counterattack, and they started singing the team song at the top of their lungs during the rest of the game. Unexpectedly, this was Manchester United's only goal in the match. As the final whistle blew, Beckham saw Philip Neville walking alone, dejected, towards the locker room. In the adult world, the fate of geniuses is not always a comedy. Beckham suddenly realized that being a professional footballer is not an easy job, and he hoped that his brother could regain his confidence and reassess his situation. Don't be too discouraged, but don't just drift along. The Neville brothers both play right back, which means that it would be difficult for them to coexist at one club if they wanted to play every week. So this attempt is a great opportunity for Phil, and if he succeeds, it will pose a significant challenge to his career at Manchester United. Nevertheless, he still sincerely hoped that the other party could do everything in his power to find his place in the team. But as brothers, Beckham saw a completely different picture in Gary Neville. Even after a disastrous day, Gary Neville, though small, stood very straight. He walked with Milosevic, seemingly discussing something. Judging from their expressions, both of them insisted that they were right, and fortunately, they both controlled their emotions well. Beckham smiled and shook his head, thinking, this guy really has a lot of free time. Even though Manchester United's performance in the second half was no worse than their opponents, and they even scored a goal, the atmosphere in the locker room remained tense. Everyone knew that the reason the two teams were evenly matched in the second half was because Aston Villa had a 3-goal lead and didn't need to go all out. Based on Manchester United's current squad, they only have the strength of a mid to upper tier team. This level is far from meeting the requirements for winning the league title. In the away team's locker room, everyone was quietly busy with their own things, with only sporadic exchanges. Nobody knows whether tomorrow or the hair dryer will come first. A short while later, Ferguson walked into the locker room and gathered everyone together. Gentlemen, it's not a big deal that we lost the first game. The league is long, and we'll see where we are by Christmas. The main responsibility for this loss lies with me. I made a decision that, in hindsight, led to our defeat. I will handle the media situation, please don't feel pressured, I believe in you all. But you guys better hold yourselves together. If I can't keep this up, you won't get away with it. Holy crap, this feels like a hairdryer poised to unleash its power. Beckham's lips twitched. He was most afraid of this feeling of being intimidated, yet not knowing when the blow would come. After saying a few words, Ferguson left the locker room to attend the routine press conference. The old man has done his best, the players' poor performance shouldn't be blamed on him, but he still has to take the blame. When the players don't perform well, everyone instinctively assumes the problem lies with the head coach. You could tell from the old man's expression that he was still very unhappy, but he remained calm in front of the players. This leaves a bad taste in one's mouth. Rather than having one person take the blame for someone else's mistakes, it would be better for everyone to take responsibility for their own actions. That way, everyone would feel better. Ferguson knew what awaited him at the press conference, but he still arrived at the venue as usual, looking completely at ease. Mr. Alex, it is said that you and Kanchelski have had a falling out. Ferguson replied expressionlessly, there is no personal conflict between us. Could you please give your opinion on him? Ferguson said in a flat tone, he came as a Soviet citizen, then became Ukrainian 2 years later, and then Russian when he participated in international competitions. Several young players appeared in the starting lineup. Can you explain why you did that? Ferguson paused for a moment before continuing, why start so many kids? I don't think that's a problem. They can start if they meet my requirements, and it has nothing to do with age. Young people always need a beginning, whether good or bad. They are a group of passionate and energetic young men, and they will bring surprises to the club. How would you rate the lad's start? The kids played well. The responsibility for the loss lies with me. I changed the formation before the game and also had some players play positions they weren't used to. I believe they will grow quickly. With 1 week left before the transfer window closes, will you consider bringing in any players? Won't. Why? Because the best player is on the team. When Wenger stretched his neck and said, the best players are already in the squad, at Arsenal, most people probably forgot that 10 years earlier, Ferguson had already said the same thing in a press conference, chewing gum and speaking in a strong tone. Ferguson's attempt to take all the blame and fully support young people failed to win over the media. Many people believe that Ferguson's decision to test young players in the Premier League was extravagant and ill-considered, sacrificing the team's performance, and few people are willing to accept it. Most importantly, Manchester United's first match was a crushing defeat, and Ferguson's stubbornness under such circumstances quickly made him the focus of public attention. On the night the league ended, the BBC's flagship programme, Match of the Day, dedicated a special segment to discussing the match. During the programme's special commentator, former Liverpool player Alan Hansen, he directly quoted the famous saying that has been written into football history, you can't win anything with a bunch of kids. In fact, this statement was partly for entertainment purposes, the true nature of the matter was not so strongly interpreted as hostility. Alan Hansen is popular in English sports programming because he often makes outrageous and controversial remarks, especially when commenting on sensitive topics. His comments about Manchester United on the show were harsh. I think Manchester United is in trouble, but I don't think it's a serious problem. If 2 or 3 players leave, we usually buy players to strengthen the team. So what Ferguson needs is to add 2 players in the transfer market. You can't win anything with kids. In an effort to deliberately create conflict, most newspapers did not quote Alan Hansen's original words, but only used the last sentence. Alan Hansen's comments received widespread support, with many fans who watched the entire program agreeing that he made no mistakes. Aston Villa spent a lot of money on players before the season, and this match proved Alan Hansen's point, those who spend money win, and those who don't lose. This has been the consensus in the football world for the past 2 years, and this match has validated this highly indicative result. Alan Hansen's assessment focused on his belief that the team's victory required proven players to achieve it. This logic seems to align with the values of most people, but it is actually a sophistry about the supremacy of money. Ferguson knew exactly what he said, but he still sharply criticized him. You can't win anything by relying on a bunch of kids. This kind of talk has no basis for discussion in any professional league. No team relies on youth training or young players, so this theory has no foundation. Manchester United relies on its youth academy, it's a great tradition of ours. We believe that academy players can improve rapidly in intense matches and contribute more to the team. We also firmly believe that academy players will bring us success. Ferguson's rebuttal infuriated Alan Hansen, who later repeatedly reiterated his last statement. Ferguson always responded with even sharper rebuttals. As a contrarian in the face of the prevailing trend, Manchester United once again found itself in the eye of a media storm. The television station even interrupted other news the following day to broadcast Manchester United's humiliating loss. In these news reports, footage of the Neville brothers making defensive mistakes but losing his defensive position was repeatedly shown. All the newspapers used inhuman headlines: Ferguson's gamble failed, Ferguson's adventure with young players failed, and Manchester United fell from the top, the Titanic of the football world. The media's actions have put immense psychological pressure on Manchester United's young players. The day after the match, Manchester United's management told the media that they would not consider renewing Ferguson's contract for the time being, as the contract between the two parties would expire next summer. Ferguson is facing his second crisis since taking charge of Manchester United. End of this chapter. Chapter 14: Gary's Wake-Up Method. The day after the match, Beckham couldn't wait to return to the Carrington training ground. According to the club's regulations, players participating in the match are entitled to 1 day of rest. However, we only played half a game yesterday. The game ended just when we were really getting into it, which was really unsatisfying. He planned to practice a little longer and, while he was at it, try the taste of the dog rose fruit. After sweating profusely, Beckham stood by the dog rose vine and quietly took a sniff, his nostrils filled with a sweet fragrance. At the end of last season, the place was full of blooming flowers, but in just 2 months, it was transformed into an orchard. The originally pink fruit gradually deepened in color, turning almost vermilion. Dave said that dog rose hips are rich in vitamin C, can aid digestion, fight fatigue, and long-term consumption can prevent diarrhea. These little fruits sound quite nutritious, but the teammates completely ignored them. Unless someone happens to be passing by during the months when the fruit is ripe and picks it and eats a few, this place is completely deserted. After all, football players in their prime are at the peak of their physical and mental state, full of energy with nowhere to expend it, so who has time to worry about health? Of course, if the dog rose fruit could grant certain indescribable mysterious abilities, it would probably be snatched up by everyone before it even ripened. The club will collect the fruit centrally, juice most of the dog rose hips for the players to make drinks, and distribute the rest to the staff as a benefit for the club. He picked a fruit with great interest, wiped it with his sleeve, and put it in his mouth. As soon as he took the first bite, a sour and astringent sensation assaulted his taste buds. Beckham frowned and smacked his lips. Holy crap, that's so sour. Forget it, it's not ripe yet. I'll wait until September to buy it. I never even noticed this adorable little thing before. But after being loaned back from Preston, Rose the dog had a different feel to her. Beckham's thoughts drifted back to February of this year, when, after a training session, the old man called him to his office without any prior notice. David, Preston North End asked if we could loan you out for a month, and I think that's a good idea. What a brilliant idea. Nicky and Gary have been playing in the league every now and then, so throwing me into a third division team is a good idea. Is this loan move because Manchester United thinks I don't have enough ability? Or is this a way to pave the way for my career after leaving Manchester United? Beckham remembers that he went straight to Harrison, his former youth coach, after leaving Ferguson's office. Harrison is the coach in the famous Class of '92 group photo whose demeanor and temperament are strikingly similar to Ferguson. So the next day, he was called to the head coach's office again. David, this loan doesn't have any special meaning. It's just to give you more senior team experience in different teams and different leagues. After receiving reassurance from Ferguson, Beckham traveled alone to the Preston training ground. It wasn't until he arrived in Preston that he truly understood what the grassroots league was like. Apart from football-related training facilities, everything else is empty. You need to take your jerseys home to wash, and everyone needs to take turns cleaning the locker room. Some teammates gave their all for victory, mainly to avoid defaulting on their loans. On his first day there, Beckham was given the right to take all the penalty kicks. He felt bad if he didn't give it his all for his teammates. A month later, Beckham returned to Manchester United. He experienced the full spectrum of life at the bottom of the English Professional Football League and also felt the intensity of a fist-to-fist match. After returning from loan, he clearly felt that he was fully prepared for the game. More importantly, the old man also started giving him opportunities to play. Beckham recalls that he started observing the dogs from that time on, and their climbing over fences and bushes often reminded him of his own childhood. Reaching this point means I'm only one step away from becoming a successful professional player. I have been constantly selected and competed under a cruel elimination mechanism since I was a child, and I have become one of the lucky ones, in the top 5%. Having reached this stage in my career, it would be somewhat ridiculous to still be agonizing over whether I'm suited to be a player. All we can do now is take every training session and match seriously. How far we end up in our professional careers is not something we can decide for ourselves. Hey, what are you doing? Gary Neville's voice and patting startled Beckham. My God, David, if you don't react soon, I'll think those things have stolen your soul. This wasn't the first time he'd seen Beckham staring blankly at his dog, Rose, but this time the symptoms were particularly pronounced. He greeted Beckham as he approached him, gently patting him to avoid startling him. Seeing that Beckham hadn't snapped out of his reverie, Gary Neville's methods of waking him up became increasingly forceful. Beckham gave Gary Neville a helpless look. This guy interrupted my train of thought again, it's really annoying. Gary, you played the whole game yesterday, why are you here again today? Beckham was surprised that Gary Neville came to the training ground the day after only resting for one morning after the match. I just came here to get some exercise, and I couldn't resist kicking the soccer ball a couple of times when I saw it. Hypocrisy. Can't people be a little more sincere with each other? Seeing Gary Neville's hair all wet, Beckham was speechless. If you're this soaked from practicing, do you have some misunderstanding about what practicing means? Where's Phil? Why didn't you bring him with you when you came out? Beckham changed the subject, saying that his brother was thrashed by Aston Villa's left winger yesterday and needed to get some fresh air. Did you watch the Premier League highlights last night? Gary Neville again did not answer the question directly. Yeah, I watched it, and it was pretty good. Beckham replied easily that it was his brother who made a fool of himself. After he came on, he not only shut down Taylor but also scored a spectacular goal, so naturally he deserved praise. Gary Neville was too tired to say anything. I don't care. He's never experienced any setbacks growing up, and now he has no interest in playing football at all. See, this is the fault of being too talented, they lose their composure after being outmaneuvered a few times. My brother is still too young. After a quick shower and a simple afternoon tea, they went their separate ways home. Upon returning home, Beckham immediately went to his top-floor bedroom, where Sky Sports was replaying a Newcastle United match. It must be said that Newcastle United, having spent a fortune to assemble a star-studded squad, certainly had the ability to defeat Coventry in less than an hour. Judging from their performance on the field, Coventry, who are in the lower half of the Premier League, were completely outmaneuvered by their opponents throughout the game. It felt like Newcastle United didn't exert much effort, yet they still managed to beat them 3 times. The gap between the two teams cannot be reflected by the score. The big spending team won the first game very easily. This match reminded Beckham of a recent hot topic, which is more suitable for a club's development, developing a youth training system or buying established players. After the first round of matches, representing the two scenarios, Manchester United suffered a crushing defeat while Newcastle achieved a resounding victory, and everyone will undoubtedly side with money-driven football. The Premier League has only been commercialized for a short time, and everyone is still figuring things out as they go. Most of the time, what they say is based solely on results. Beckham felt wronged, but couldn't prove he was right. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore. Let me read the biographies written by the fans. It feels pretty good to be praised. The test launch is this afternoon, and the cover isn't finished yet, but I can't leave it unfinished. I'll pick one from the website's resource library first. End of this chapter. Chapter 15. This lousy book is abusive to its protagonist. Beckham picked up the biography sent to him by a fan, and this time he read it from cover to cover in one go. No, not exactly from beginning to end, because this hardcover book only has half the content, the other half is blank pages. Couldn't you save some money on paper? Are you suggesting I use the remaining half to write in my diary? Beckham may have been internally complaining, but his hands didn't stop. He continued compiling the book until 2003. One has to admire this fan's imagination. He arranged his football career up to the age of 28 in great detail and with vivid detail. That's so thoughtful. It has to be said that this guy must have watched a lot of those ridiculous TV dramas, and he's also quite adept at creating conflict and plot twists. He has a certain level of writing skill, and he narrates the story in the first person from beginning to end, making the whole text quite smooth to read. The only downside is that this guy really enjoys torturing his protagonist. In the stories he creates, his own career is never smooth sailing. Whenever one's career is on the rise, it will soon experience a precipitous decline. He won the league title with his team for 2 consecutive seasons, and then played every game in the World Cup qualifiers. It seems that he has embarked on the road to becoming a superstar. But then things went wrong. With the World Cup just around the corner, the England manager removed himself from the starting lineup for some strange and trivial reasons. England then barely made it out of the group stage and faced South American powerhouse Argentina in the first round of the knockout stage. The choice of this opponent was clearly malicious. Importantly, when the two teams were evenly matched, England's irrational retaliatory behavior forced them to play with only 10 men for the remainder of the game, ultimately leading to their elimination. At this point, everyone shifted the blame onto him, making him the scapegoat. Isn't this abuse of the protagonist? This author brought his career to its lowest point, and then propelled himself to its peak. In the season following the FIFA World Cup in France, Manchester United won the treble of the Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. The Champions League final was comparable to a Hollywood blockbuster, with the protagonist dragging the game out until the very end before making a miraculous comeback, turning the tide just in time for the movie's runtime. The author not only has strong writing skills, but has also watched countless films. In the following years, his professional career at the club progressed steadily, but he broke his foot in a tackle just before the World Cup. Does the protagonist have to be treated this cruelly? He had a broken foot, but it was back to normal 2 weeks before the World Cup started. Given the parabolic trajectory of the story, shouldn't I be winning the World Cup by now? Beckham was so engrossed in the suspenseful story that he completely lost track of time. Surprisingly, England did not go very far in this World Cup. It seems this fan is quite pessimistic about the England team's strength, so much so that he's unwilling to give himself a World Cup title even if he's just making up stories. Are you sure the England team is that bad? Beckham was somewhat exasperated by this fan's obsession, but he couldn't help but keep reading. In the final season of the story, he simply fell out with Ferguson and transferred to Real Madrid, which perfectly matches the first chapter of the book. This is actually a perfect connection between the beginning and the end. After reading the entire content, Beckham pondered it carefully. In fact, the career path this fan had created for himself wasn't bad at all, a key right-winger in the treble-winning team and a leader of the national team. Even if he couldn't make it at Manchester United, he could still go to Real Madrid and continue playing, and even maximize his personal commercial value. When talking about commercial value, we have to mention the story's female protagonist, Victoria. The book devotes a large number of chapters to describing the process of how he and Victoria met and got married, and I felt like I was completely manipulated by her in the story. Anyway, ever since she came along, the tone of his career has changed. The two people entered into a relationship in a daze, and then one of them was led by the nose by the other. To see her, he even drove to London, then rushed back in the middle of the night to continue training the next morning. Can a professional player play well if he's constantly messing around like this? He was excluded from the starting lineup by the England manager because of Victoria, and his falling out with Ferguson was also because of her. This woman, who uses her popularity to maintain her fame, can give birth to a boy every 2 years. Victoria left her infant child behind in order to attend a fashion week. He took time off from his training and became a full-time stay-at-home dad. That's basically the gist of the book. Beckham finished flipping through the last page with content and stretched. I can't believe I finished reading such a heart-wrenching story. Looking up at the wall clock, Beckham couldn't help but exclaim inwardly, how time flies. It's almost 11 o'clock already. I missed my evening strength training because I was reading a book that was really tough on me. How annoying. After a quick wash, Beckham immediately lay down. Feeling a bit resentful, I got up, picked up the biography, and wrote on the blank first page, "This book can be summarized in one sentence: a football star's career was ruined by a washed-up girl group member." The end. After venting his frustrations in the book, Beckham felt sleepy and immediately closed his eyes. I slept without any dreams. After a day of rest and adjustment, most players have largely recovered from the devastating impact of their first-round defeat. A professional player's season can be broken down into countless small cycles: preparation, matches, rest, and more preparation. The English professional leagues have a very dense schedule. Teams of Manchester United's caliber compete on 4 fronts every season, basically playing 2 games every week. As a professional player, if you can't get over a loss, you really can't play football. For athletes like this, I suggest they try boxing. It's common for them to have a year or 2 between matches. By this standard, my younger brother could start boxing right now. Cough cough, am I being too harsh in thinking like this? After all, my brother is only 18 years old and has a smooth career. We can't let him be dismissed just because he's been in a slump for a while. It seems that my competitive spirit is the culprit. Compared to Philip Neville, Gary Neville was practically on steroids. Over the next few days, Beckham saw his opponent every morning when he arrived at the stadium, indicating that they had been practicing for a long time. This guy spends all his time on the training field except for eating and sleeping. He's a classic example of someone with average talent who works hard and establishes himself in a top club. Ahem, I'm being sarcastic again. Actually, Gary Neville's talent is by no means lacking. No player who makes it into Manchester United's first team is lacking in talent. To be honest, Gary Neville has gone much further in his career than I have, and he secured his starting right-back position last season. It is said that Venables has his eye on this young right-back with a big heart and plans to scout him during the next international break. If things continue like this, it's already quite remarkable that this guy will be able to participate in world-class competitions in his early 20s. It has to be said that the choice is very important. There are fewer people training for the right-back position, so the chances of success are naturally much higher. It's starting to taste a little sour, haha. Beckham admired Gary Neville's hard work, but he didn't intend to follow suit. He had his own training plan. He also does extra training every day after the regular training session, but he only practices free kicks. One trick is all you need to succeed. Young players need to have unique characteristics to be remembered, and they can't have weaknesses if they want to go far in their careers. This sentence came from his great father. These past few days, everyone has focused on training, and life hasn't been too eventful. The only minor incident occurred on the second day of training before the match. Beckham was practicing free kicks when he suddenly heard a loud, gruff voice. The speaker sounded like he was in a frenzy, and his tone had become hysterical. He stopped what he was doing and looked in the direction of the sound. He was utterly astonished by what he saw. Is this some kind of performance art? End of this chapter. Chapter 16: A tragedy caused by a bicycle. Beckham had taken dozens of free kicks in a row and was about to rest when he saw 2 lumps of flesh running out of the locker room in the distance. Ignoring his fatigue, he went over to them. Mental well-being is more important. After all, I've never seen performance art before, so I'm going to have a good look at it today. The person running behind had already cracked his voice. Although the voice was distorted, Beckham determined from the level of profanity used that the person was the Great Dane Schmeichel. This guy is furious. Who is that guy in front of me? There are too many pranks played by professional football teams in England. Players being pranked is commonplace. Some of the more common pranks are so bad that the media doesn't even bother to report on them. Beckham couldn't help but chuckle as he recalled his first match in Preston. In that match, the Preston team was wearing white jerseys. Less than half an hour into the game, the referee stopped the match and walked towards him. Do you want to take care of your lower body? Beckham looked down at his lower body but didn't see anything unusual. There were no holes in his shorts, and he showed no physical reaction, so why was he asking himself that question? As a result, the players from both teams laughed, while Beckham looked puzzled and touched his back to find his hands covered in red. Holy crap, what's going on? At this rate of blood loss, he's probably not far from dying. A few minutes later, a pale-faced Beckham finally understood what had happened. He had been pranked by Moyes, and his buttocks were now bright red. He would never forget that afternoon, when the home fans called him Ms. David and the away fans called him Mr. Hemorrhoids. That's so damn embarrassing. Thinking about this, Beckham's desire to gossip grew stronger. He quickened his pace, wanting to see what was going on. What he saw next shocked him to his core. Bart, naked from the waist down, flashed past him and ran forward without looking back, a towel draped over his shoulder. Schmeichel was hot on his heels, swearing and grabbing him relentlessly. He didn't even have a towel on him. As the team's senior figure, Schmeichel is not someone to be trifled with, and given Bart's personality, he shouldn't have provoked him. Even if he was being bullied, without anyone else stirring things up, Bart, that simpleton, wouldn't have made things so terrible. Schmeichel's anger made him appear even faster than Bart. He was now running for his life. One thing is foreseeable, if Schmeichel captures Bart now, he might fight until he's exhausted. Bart understood this as well, so he unleashed his full power, and the two engaged in a life-or-death chase in the training base, barely clothed, drawing cheers and applause from the other teams and staff. Bart had already shaken off the Great Dane, but in his panic, he chose the wrong route and ran into a dead end. Fortunately, he pretended to be exhausted, and just when Schmeichel thought he was about to catch him, he suddenly lowered his center of gravity and ran away in the opposite direction, heading straight for the parking lot. Panting heavily, Schmeichel waited outside the locker room, hoping Bart would come back to get himself killed. Bart's clothes, wallet, and car keys were all in the locker room, and unless he ran home naked, he would eventually have to come back. Little did he know that as he ran out of the locker room, Gary Neville had already taken Bart's backpack to the parking lot. In the head coach's office, Ferguson chewed gum as he listened to equipment manager Albert recount what had happened. He felt like he was about to explode if he didn't get his mouth moving. Seeing two naked men chasing each other on the training field, Ferguson was trembling with rage. He felt insulted. However, he did not rush to make a decision. Instead, he called each of the staff members present to him and told them what had happened. After Albert finished recounting what had happened, Ferguson calmed down a bit. Have you figured out why Nicky did that? Hearing that it was just a prank, he calmed down a bit. Albert indicated he wasn't quite sure, so Ferguson calmly replied, I understand. Let Peter go home and tell him someone took Nicky's bag and car keys. After Albert had gone some distance away, Brian Kidd spoke up, Boss, do you need me to suppress this news? It's not easy to keep the media quiet, but it's not impossible. Just promise the media present that you'll give them one or two big news stories in return, and you can basically get it done. Ferguson shook his head, forget it, let those two idiots help the team get some media attention. And while we're at it, let's find out why this happened. Half an hour later, Beckham listened to Gary Neville recount the whole story with great interest in the restaurant. Bart has been coming to training by bicycle these past few days and parking his bicycle in the designated parking space. So Schmeichel put his bicycle on the roof of the bike shed for 2 consecutive days, which made Bart, who was exhausted after training and only 1.75 meters tall, very indignant. Seeing his brother being bullied, Gary Neville decided to retaliate against Schmeichel. As the strategist of a youth training camp, he suggested that Bart fill a basin with hot water, pour it over the Great Dane from behind, and then turn around and run away. This plan sounded feasible. The hot water in the locker room wasn't very hot, it would only scald Schmeichel a little. Little did anyone know that Bart made a major mistake when carrying out the plan. He walked behind Schmeichel with a small basin in his hand and glanced at the other man's back. The Dane noticed him and turned around with lightning speed. In a moment of panic, Bart splashed hot water on the other person's genitals. Upon hearing this, Beckham's expression changed. Just listening to it makes you feel how much pain Schmeichel was in, it was so brutal. Poor Schmeichel screamed and rinsed himself with cold water before chasing after them. Beckham saw everything that happened next. He never imagined that he would almost miss such a big juicy story if he wasn't paying attention for a few days. These guys are really a bunch of silly, idiotic youths who always seem to cause trouble. The next morning, Ferguson called the two men into his office separately without waiting for them to make contact, and then started the hairdryer. He threatened to sell the two if they continued to cause trouble and affect team unity. The two did not have a conflict after leaving the office, but they also did not speak to each other again. This was just a brief interlude at the beginning of the season. Manchester United then focused their attention on training, ignoring the various media outlets that fabricated different versions of the naked chase between the two. Ferguson could have stopped the situation from escalating, but he didn't. This was a way of retaliating against the board, who had chosen to stand by and watch the media attack him, and now it was their turn to be embarrassed. So he decided to let the board of directors eat as much gossip as possible, preferably until they got diarrhea. Few of the board members possessed the talent and skill to manage the club. They consistently failed to grasp the essentials, overlook the major issues, and nitpick over trivial matters. Their common trait is that they are obsessed with saving face, constantly talking about the club's honors, which is actually just making trouble out of nothing. So Ferguson showed them what he was made of, to see who was afraid of whom. So in the afternoon, the club's board of directors convened an emergency meeting with Ferguson. At the emergency meeting, the board first questioned Ferguson about selling several key players, and then criticized his inaction in the transfer market, calling it a negative performance. Ferguson completely ignored these bigwigs. After exchanging some unpleasant words, Ferguson once again turned on the hairdryer and staged a dramatic verbal battle with the assembled experts. The board's showdown with Ferguson ended in defeat once again, but this time they are not prepared to give up. Ferguson's contract expires next summer, and the club seized on this, once again warning him through the media that if he does not exercise caution and manage the team well, the club will consider cancelling negotiations. The strong-willed Ferguson had no intention of backing down. He had the media relay a message to the club's board: "I was just about to tell them that we'll discuss contract renewals after the season ends." End of this chapter. Chapter 17. Even own goals are world-class goals. Ferguson was a true Iron Man. During his years managing Manchester United, no one could ever get ahead of him. He remained defiant until his retirement, and no one dared to touch him, not even the club's board of directors could make him submit. His agent withdrew from contract renewal negotiations that same day, which escalated the conflict between the two parties, and various rumors began to circulate. At this delicate moment, Manchester United players gave interviews to the media, expressing their support for their manager. Key players like Keane have been saying that if Ferguson leaves the team in this way, he will also seek a transfer. The board was stunned. They thought victory was assured, but they had misjudged Ferguson's backbone and his ability to control the team. The Manchester United manager intimidated the management with his tough stance, but he knew very well that without results, no matter how brilliant his past coaching record was, he could not keep his position. Only impressive KPIs can justify his arrogance and dissent. After all, Ferguson's support among Manchester United fans doesn't seem ideal right now, and that's the basis for the board's attack on him. As for player support, it will change over time. A club that cannot win, no matter how charismatic the head coach is or how good his personal relationship with the players is, will eventually develop cracks if it does not have a foundation of victories. If Ferguson wants to remain unbeaten, he needs to defeat West Ham United from London in the upcoming league match. On August 23, Manchester United welcomed West Ham United to Old Trafford. This club, which was founded by workers, was known for its toughness and was notoriously difficult to beat in the Premier League. Anyone who thinks they can easily get 3 points from them will likely end up looking disheveled by the end of the game. Looking at the schedule, Manchester United's start to the season has not been easy. They first faced Aston Villa, who spent heavily on signing new players, and then had to host the tough West Ham United at home. Fortunately, Captain Bruce made a timely return to the game, and Andy Cole was also able to play, but due to his stamina issues, he could only be placed on the bench. More importantly, the team returned to Old Trafford and donned the red jersey that symbolizes victory once again. Ferguson reverted to a 4-4-2 formation, with Gary Neville returning to right back, and Beckham positioned in front of him. When the old man announced in the pre-match meeting that David will be the starting right winger, Beckham was not particularly excited. It's not because he's particularly strong or ambitious. With Giggs injured, Kanchelski sold off in a fire sale, and his brother being outplayed, he was the only option left for the right winger position. This situation is definitely not suitable for clenching your fists or bursting into tears of joy. Lee Sharp remains the starting left winger, as Giggs is still struggling with a hamstring problem. In the midfield, Butt and Keane partnered up front, while Scholes and veteran McClair formed the attacking duo. West Ham United also want to follow Aston Villa's example and find a breakthrough by targeting Gary Neville. However, back in his familiar position, Gary Neville was like a fighting dog, tearing apart every West Ham player who tried to invade his territory from the very beginning. In midfield, West Ham United discovered something strange. Whenever their midfielders on the left side of midfield failed to pass the ball out in time, they would be double-teamed. Among the players who came to double-team, there must be that young man wearing the number 24 jersey. Beckham's running enabled the team to execute several dazzling combinations in the midfield and attacking third. In the 21st minute, Beckham delivered a highly accurate long pass from the right wing. The extremely spun pass caused the opposing centre-back to misjudge the header, resulting in chaos in the penalty area. The ball was cleared to Manchester United's left flank. Left-back Irwin took advantage of the opponent's unstable defence, played a 1-2 with Scholes, broke into the penalty area, and crossed the ball. The goalkeeper instinctively blocked the shot with his chest, but he immediately got up, turned halfway, and volleyed the ball into the goal. Pretty. Ferguson, sitting on the sidelines, unusually stood up to celebrate the goal, which came at a very opportune time. If he can win this game, he can at least stay afloat for another month. Manchester United fans sang merrily, believing that West Ham United were not yet at a level where they could compete with Manchester United. However, what happened next was completely unexpected. Just 1 minute later, West Ham United launched an attack, with their right winger mimicking Beckham's long pass, but the effect was extremely poor. Captain Bruce jumped up to head the ball away, but whether it was due to a lack of physical condition or a misjudgment of the ball's trajectory, he headed the ball on the back of his head. The football flew towards the bottom left corner of the goal in a bizarre manner, and Schmeichel made a desperate save, but it was too late. Seeing the Great Dane bounce on the grass before barely landing, Beckham couldn't help but recall the scene of the dog running naked at the training ground. This goal proves the saying widely circulated among professional players: own goals are all world-class goals. Bruce's face turned bright red, and amidst the gasps of the crowd, he stood there, bewildered. "Take a deep breath, Steve." Just as 35-year-old Bruce was on the verge of a breakdown, Beckham came over and comforted his captain. Sometimes, not being able to jump high isn't a player's fault, the mistake lies in thinking they can still jump at their age. Then the other players came up one after another to encourage Bruce. "Thank you, David. Let's continue. Is this the stability and maturity of a middle-aged man?" Beckham recalled an incident when he was 9 years old, when his father messed up a job. Beckham acted nonchalant, forcing a smile all day, thinking no one could tell. Can't this society allow a middle-aged man to have a breakdown once or twice occasionally? Bruce silently walked across the goal line, retrieved the ball, and kicked it towards the center line. As the team captain, he felt he could help the team out of their predicament, but the ball he just made him feel a little ashamed. That header made him suddenly realize that he was no longer young. If time could go back 5 years, he might have been able to head that long pass out of the penalty area with just a slight jump. Even before he got injured, he was able to get out of trouble. The power of time lies in its ability to slip away silently from a person without their awareness, until one day they suddenly realize how quickly time flies. Beckham felt he should do something to help Uncle Bruce get out of his predicament as soon as possible. It's not difficult to get the opponent out of their predicament, all they need to do is let their team score another goal. The problem is that West Ham United, after scoring, seemed unsatisfied with the status quo and wanted to take advantage of Manchester United's turmoil to add another goal. However, Beckham felt that the opponent was still lacking, and if he didn't think about winning, he might still have a chance to get a point from Manchester United. If you have too many ideas, you'll just have to wait and see. End of this chapter. Chapter 18: Lure the snake out of its hole. Hey man, their right back is passing the ball too easily. We should press them high up the pitch. During the gap between losing the ball and restarting the game, Beckham took the initiative to communicate with Lee Sharpe, a talented left winger who is one of the few players in England who combines speed and technique. Every time he handles the ball, people can see his inspiration. However, his shortcomings are also obvious. He doesn't focus his energy on football in normal times, and he doesn't pay attention to defense during matches. "David, I'm glad you can discuss these things with me, but I prefer to solve problems my own way." In Lee Sharpe's mind, Beckham was just a child, and he obviously wouldn't be manipulated by a boy. "Do as he says, we need to put pressure on them, they shouldn't have scored. Keane came over to support Beckham, and spoke in an unquestionable tone. "No problem, I'll do as you say." Lee Sharpe didn't want to cause trouble, so he quickly compromised. After the restart, Manchester United began to control the ball, not giving their opponents any chance to create chaos. West Ham United are not afraid of tough English teams, they are experts at that style of play. However, when it comes to passing and possession, they are clearly no match for Manchester United. After kickoff, Manchester United quickly passed the ball to Lee Sharpe, who is one of the most threatening players in the current squad. Before Lee Sharpe could receive the ball, West Ham United players pressed up from behind, using their upper bodies to squeeze him and try to make him lose possession. As soon as Manchester United's passing stops, West Ham United can immediately unleash their tough style of football in the chaos. Lee Sharpe leaned heavily against the defender, and just as the ball came, he suddenly dodged past him. The sudden turn of events caught the defender off guard, as the ball slipped between his legs. Manchester United's left winger advanced forward and, just as a West Ham United defender closed in, passed the ball across to Butt, who adjusted slightly and then passed it directly to Beckham. David, try to break through his defense. Keane shouted as he saw West Ham's left back closing in on Beckham. Beckham understood that Keane was giving him directions, not encouraging him to act recklessly. But in order to get rid of the other party, you have to put on a convincing act. Beckham feigned a breakthrough, and influenced by Keane's psychological suggestion, West Ham United's defenders immediately accelerated to block his dribbling route. Just as the opponent accelerated, Beckham suddenly stopped, then passed the ball to the Irish midfielder, and then charged forward with all his might. West Ham United's fullback was dumbfounded. He couldn't chase back, and he couldn't block Keane in time. He could only try to move into Keane's passing lane. Keane wasn't about to give him that chance. As he moved laterally halfway down the court, he passed the ball to Beckham with the outside of his foot. The pass was perfectly placed in front of Beckham, who quickly dribbled the ball to the edge of the penalty area. Before the opposing centre-back could get into position, he immediately passed the ball to Scholes. West Ham United centre-backs were unable to mount any offensive pressure from behind to contain the 1.7-metre-tall ginger head during their defensive runs. Scholes dribbled laterally the instant the defender closed him down, and West Ham United's defense immediately fell into chaos. The tall, strong defenders were completely helpless against Scholes's penetration. With a quick step to the side, Shin Jiangtu unleashed a powerful shot. The defenders couldn't block it in time, and the goalkeeper had no chance to react, watching helplessly as the ball flew towards the goal. "Oh no!" Scholes cried out in frustration the moment he took the shot. As a seasoned thief, he had a bad feeling the instant he took the shot. Sure enough, the football hit the crossbar with a loud thud and then bounced up to the 7th tier of the stands. A sigh escaped Old Trafford as all Manchester United fans lamented the disappointment of that brilliant attack. The football that flew into the stand suffered, being kicked and punched around by Manchester United fans in a fit of rage, and could only dodge and weave. West Ham United then retreated to a defensive posture and barely survived the first half. At half-time, Ferguson appeared highly motivated. "Gentlemen, we played well in the first half. Some mistakes were unavoidable, and we need to work together to overcome them. If we play like this in the second half, we'll definitely win." Sitting in front of the locker, Beckham appeared relaxed, feeling like a seasoned veteran capable of handling even the most dire situations. In his view, even if Manchester United couldn't win, they couldn't possibly lose, because the opponent's passing and control were just too rough. After the start of the second half, West Ham United continued to defend tightly, while Manchester United launched a series of attacks, but the score remained unchanged. They missed several clear scoring opportunities, allowing their opponents to recover. After 2 consecutive substitutions, West Ham United managed to influence the overall game through localized adjustments, making them appear to be evenly matched with Manchester United. Ferguson sat on the coach's bench, a barely perceptible smile on his face. Manchester United's strongest lineup is on the field, but the word strongest is somewhat exaggerated. If Manchester United continues to dominate the game, and their confidence falters and their stamina declines after a prolonged period of attacking without success, they could very well suffer a home defeat. It wasn't that Ferguson didn't want to make changes, but due to injuries, Manchester United's squad was severely depleted, and they could only manage to put together a starting lineup. On their bench sat Andy Cole, who had just recovered from injury, Philip Neville, who had a touching performance in the last game, and a youth academy player. He dared not release the three divine beasts unless absolutely necessary. Now that West Ham United dares to attack, it suits his purposes perfectly. If this not-so-weak opponent is determined to park the bus, all Premier League teams will have to put in a lot of effort to beat them. But if they dare to push forward freely, they will only be a mediocre mid-table team. West Ham United's formation slowly moved forward, and the players began to dream of a happy ending after surviving such a close call. However, with veteran players in the lineup, Manchester United is not afraid. No matter how aggressive the opponent is, they are still an ordinary opponent and cannot be possessed by a god or a football king. So even when playing in open fields, West Ham United's disadvantage in ball control meant they spent most of the time chasing Manchester United. Manchester United's midfielders and forwards demonstrated a high level of integration between individual players and the team, with dazzling attacking combinations that left their opponents exhausted. This time, West Ham United did not choose to survive. Their manager changed players again, and they are ready to go head-to-head with Manchester United. The highlights of Aston Villa's thrashing of Manchester United have been inspiring all the lower-ranked Premier League teams this week, as everyone wants to mess with Manchester United's young, inexperienced squad. West Ham United have begun to commit a large number of players to their attack, which means they will only create more and more gaps in their defense. Manchester United were now on the defensive, but unlike West Ham United in the first half, they were not passively defending. Instead, they solidified their defense and disrupted the opponent's attacking rhythm with counterattacks by several players. In the 68th minute, West Ham United won a corner kick. They committed 7 players to the attacking third at once, with Scholes and Butt standing by the goalposts on Manchester United's side. West Ham United took a corner kick, and their striker headed the ball at the near post, causing it to deflect and head straight for the bottom right corner of the goal. Schmeichel didn't have time to move, now it's up to Scholes. The football hit the ginger head right in the chest. It was awkward to use his head or his feet, and he had no chance to make a mistake, with the goal right behind him. Gingerhead took a deep breath and then blocked the ball with his chest. However, Manchester United's danger was not over, as Scholes' clearances simply did not go far enough. After a scramble for the ball in the penalty area, it was won by a West Ham United player. He swung the ball towards the goal, and Beckham felt his heart suddenly race. It was so exciting. Just as the West Ham United player took the shot, Gary Neville leaped into the direction of the shot like a diver. The ball hit his back and bounced to the edge of the penalty area. Beckham got the ball first, and the instant he touched it, he dribbled it nearly 10 meters and sprinted toward the opponent's goal. Perhaps because his heart was beating too fast, he felt that all his movements were more than a beat faster than usual. Giggs often said, "The worst thing about fast breaks is overthinking, just do it." Beckham thought the same thing, and when he touched the ball again, he dribbled it nearly 10 meters away. Seeing his rough play, West Ham United's defense panicked. End of this chapter. Chapter 19, Goals are earned through confrontation. Beckham's acceleration caught the defenders off guard. They only had 4 defenders in their own half, including the goalkeeper. Besides Beckham, Lee Sharp and Keane were on either side of him, while the rest of the Manchester United players were running wildly behind him. The scene looked both exciting and hilarious. As Beckham surged forward, Old Trafford erupted once again, with fans rising to their feet and cheering. "David, run. Don't let them catch up. Roy is on the right, pass the ball. Dribble the ball upfield and unleash another incredible shot." Beckham's speed is not his core weapon, but his physical strength is extremely strong, and his ability to maintain speed during continuous sprints is outstanding. With 70 minutes played, the West Ham United player closest to Beckham embarrassingly discovered that after running nearly 20 meters, he not only failed to catch up with Beckham dribbling the ball, but had actually fallen behind. Beckham ran until he was 40 meters from the goal before being caught up by a West Ham United winger who had just come on as a substitute. This winger is physically strong and very experienced in defense. He stayed close to Beckham from the moment of contact and used some subtle tactics that the referee couldn't call. Beckham slowed down, but he was already close to the goal. The next moment will be the key to this counterattack. If Beckham can't shake off his opponent, the defenders behind him will only need a few seconds to get back in position. Similarly, if West Ham United's defenders allow Beckham to keep running like that, danger will inevitably arise in front of the goal sooner or later. In an instant, the two made the same decision and simultaneously rammed into each other. The West Ham United players were noticeably stronger, but Beckham was also very brave, and the two collided hard while running at high speed. Beckham was knocked down, and his chest slid a long distance across the grass. I'm speechless. After training my core for so long, I've ended up with a body that's worse than lean meat. Beckham couldn't help but think to himself, what am I complaining about? The West Ham United defenders were completely unprepared for the seemingly frail young player next to them to unleash such a powerful impact, and they too were knocked down. Out of the corner of his eye, Beckham saw that the defender had fallen in an even worse position than he had, and he felt a sense of relief. He used his arms to prop himself up and charged toward the ball. Two of West Ham United's three defenders in their own half were marking Lee Sharp and Keane, while the third kept retreating until he reached the edge of the penalty area. When he saw Beckham fall, he rushed towards the ball. Get up! Keane's sharp voice sent a shiver down Beckham's spine. He gritted his teeth, growled, and charged toward the ball. The West Ham United defender and Beckham made a sliding tackle on the ball almost simultaneously. Beckham touched the ball first, and at the moment of contact, he flicked the ball up with his toe, over the defender. Keane burst out from the side, feigning a shot. When the defender tackled, he twisted the ball with his left foot, passed it to his right foot, and then curled a shot that grazed the goalkeeper's fingertips and flew into the goal. Yeah! Old Trafford Stadium uttered this exclamation almost simultaneously, as if it had been rehearsed beforehand. Nice shot! Beckham lay on the ground, clenched his fists, and waved his hands vigorously, finally proving himself. Let these burly players experience what it's like to face a good-looking and strong opponent. I'm handsome, I play well, and I can win games, so tell me, aren't you angry? The stands erupted in noise, with some applauding the goal, some singing, some cursing West Ham United, and some fans jumping around wildly, creating a jubilant atmosphere on the pitch. After scoring, Keane ran to the sidelines and spread his arms wide. At his urging, the entire stadium chanted rhythmically, Roy, Roy. After celebrating his goal with the fans, Roy Keane turned around and found Beckham, who was still resting with his thigh in his hand. After all, he had just had a fierce argument with a defender who was chasing back, and before he could recover, he got up and had a tackle with another defender. He was in pain all over. Gary Neville patted Beckham on the back, well done. If Phil had half your courage, you wouldn't have had a chance to play. This doesn't sound like a compliment. Is this the treatment a hero should receive? Beckham was too lazy to talk to him. Your brother is competing with me. You're doomed. Keane ran towards him, the guy had finally gone crazy enough. David, well done. Keane gave Beckham a hug, and then the other Manchester United players came over and surrounded the two of them. David, are you alright? Scholes and But noticed that Beckham was still standing there for a while, so they gathered around to ask about his health. Beckham shook his head, I'm fine, I just felt like I'd been punched twice. On the sidelines, Ferguson shouted with a serious expression, David, how are you feeling? If you're not feeling well, you can be substituted. In his view, the player's health must be the top priority. If Beckham is injured, then he will have no choice but to start Philip Neville. Judging from this kid's performance in the last game, he's probably going to cause trouble. However, substitutions should be made when necessary. If Philip Neville doesn't perform particularly poorly, he should be able to play for 20 minutes without much problem. Upon hearing the old man's voice, Beckham quickly waved his hand. The noise was loud, but it was obvious that the old man was asking about his health. Boss, I'm fine, and my strength is also fine. I'm not that delicate, it would be too embarrassing to be forced off the field after only 2 collisions. If he's substituted like that, he'll never be able to play football in Preston. Ferguson turned to Brian Kidd and said, I'm not going to listen to him. Take him off immediately. If he's really injured, playing another 20 minutes will probably cost him 2 months of recovery time. 5 minutes later, Beckham was still full of energy, but Lee Sharp was too tired to run anymore. Ferguson grumbled a few words with a look of disgust, gestured for Philip Neville to warm up, and then called Dave over, check on David's condition later. If you determine he can't continue, tell me immediately. If he gets injured, you better watch out. Dave, okay, boss. He was also helpless, wondering why other players could be so easily dominated on the field. David resisted twice, and the old man felt sorry for him. It's true that good looks are everything. 2 minutes later, Lee Sharp strolled slowly off the field. West Ham United players couldn't stand it anymore and came up to help him off the field, but he pushed their arms away. The players shoved and shoved him off the sideline, and Philip Neville scurried off to the left wing. My younger brother is only 18 years old and still a bit inexperienced. The reason he can stay in the first team is not only because he has good talent, but more importantly because he can play 8 positions on the field. It's important to know that the Premier League squad can only register 14 players per match, which means there are only 3 players on the bench, including the substitute goalkeeper. This is where the value of a versatile player like Philippe Neville comes in. He can do the work of 8 players while sitting on the bench, which is really worthwhile. If he can play at his normal level, he can definitely make a living at Manchester United. Go change into some clean clothes. Ferguson glanced at Lee Sharp and said something indifferent, which could be considered a greeting. After this kid's income increased, he lost his sense of self and hasn't made any significant progress in the past 2 years. He's showing signs of living off his past achievements. Ferguson was certain that the boy would sneak out and indulge in debauchery whenever he had the chance. If Beckham sleeps 11 hours after training, Lee Sharp probably spends 11 hours a day entangled with different women. Ferguson felt a bit disgusted by the boy's unsteady gait. If the team weren't short of players right now, they would have already sold him for cash. He no longer has any hope for this playboy who can only play 70 minutes. With 10 minutes left in the game, the trailing West Ham United resorted to long balls and crosses. Ferguson substituted Andy Cole for McClare, intending to use him to intimidate the defenders. In stoppage time, West Ham United capitalized on a corner kick with a high-level aerial volley, with an attacking player heading the ball towards goal from less than 3 meters from Schmeichel. The Dane used the same reaction speed he had when he had his back to bait that day, raising his hand to block the ball out of bounds. Beckham was the first to rush up and give him a high five. Well done, Peter. Schmeichel slapped him on the head. Get to defense. Bart then rushed up and jumped on the Dane, trying to celebrate by colliding with him. Schmeichel shoved but in the head and yelled, "Get the hell to defend, you son of a bitch." After a 3-day Cold War, the two finally spoke, though in a very strange way. End of this chapter. Chapter 20, 3 consecutive wins mean drinks. Manchester United secured a narrow victory against West Ham United at home, with the team's young players initially demonstrating their fighting spirit. The best player of the match was Roy Keane, a versatile Irishman who is good at both attacking and defending and is a consistent performer for Manchester United. After Paul Ince's transfer to Inter Milan, he seamlessly transitioned into the team's midfield core. He scored 1 goal and demonstrated his impressive abilities on both offense and defense. The first 2 games of the season proved that Keane is a spiritual leader with excellent resilience. In stark contrast to Ince's tendency to berate young players for making mistakes, Mark Hughes' lukewarm attitude towards young players was evident, and Keane stabilized the young players' emotions. Keane's tough, uncompromising personality made him a shoo-in for the team's future captain. Besides Keane, Irwin and Schmeichel also performed very consistently in this match. At the same time, several young players at Manchester United have also proven their worth. Inside the locker room, Ferguson, who had just finished a press conference, was all smiles. At the press conference, he gave a scathing rebuke to several brainless reporters who, despite having already won the game, were still asking idiotic questions. By simply turning the hair dryer to its lowest setting, Ferguson thoroughly humiliated everyone at the press conference, including the West Ham United manager. Ferguson recounted the events of the press conference with a smile, and proudly declared to everyone, "Now those idiots finally know whether our kids can win. Boss, David played very bravely in this game, and Paul, Gary, Nicky, and Phil were also good. Should we organize some small activities to welcome the kids?" Steve Bruce took the opportunity to praise Beckham in front of the head coach as a way of repaying him. "Steve, do you have any plans?" Ferguson asked. Bruce didn't speak rashly. After all, he hadn't done anything to atone for his crimes and had even relied on someone else's coattails. He couldn't possibly say such a thing. David should say that even if he's wrong, the old man won't hold it against him. Children say the darndest things. Boss, I think it's better to listen to the kids' opinions. David, do you have any plans? Beckham's lips twitched slightly when he saw Bruce bring the troublemaker over. Uncle Bruce played a double agent role today, so he's afraid to speak. He's letting himself be the one to step in the trap. His first thought was to pass the ball to another teammate, but he changed his mind immediately. If the future leader of Manchester United doesn't even have this much responsibility, how can he lead his teammates in the world? Thinking of this, Beckham didn't mince words and immediately said, "Boss, I think we should find a chance to have a drink together." After saying this, Beckham gave himself a mental thumbs up, thinking how well he had put it. As everyone knows, putting football aside, the old man's biggest hobby is horse racing and related activities. He enjoys any event related to horses. Another hobby of his was drinking. If the old man had a good relationship with a certain head coach, he would usually sit down and have a few drinks with him after the game. This is called catering to someone's preferences. Besides, if British men don't drink, they might as well go home and grow sweet potatoes. Everyone in the locker room right now is a drunkard. Ferguson nodded, "That's a good idea, but not today. If we can win the next 2 games, we can all have a drink together." Beckham couldn't help but clap his hands, and the others, thinking he was flattering the head coach, started blindly following suit. He clapped his hands, actually marveling at the old man's ability to adapt to changing circumstances, turning the drinking incident into an incentive program in the blink of an eye. "I refuse to believe that you won't drink if the team doesn't win." These days, the media is paying close attention to Manchester United's performance. If they lose another game, they'll probably have to try to be more resilient. The young people withstood the pressure, and their performance was recognized by the media. The Daily Mail sports section praised the young players' performance. Manchester United starting lineup featured 4 young players who held their nerve after a disastrous performance in the last game, and their performance deserved a victory. Paul Scholes scored the team's first goal. David Beckham's running ability was amazing, and he also provided the assist for Keane's winning goal. Meanwhile, Gary Neville and Nicky Butt also performed very consistently. Other well-known newspapers have followed suit, and now all of England is waiting to see the latest news about Manchester United. If this issue doesn't catch up, fans who want to follow the story will probably have to look to other newspapers. In its report on Manchester United's performance, The Guardian argued that the entire team played poorly in the last match, not just the academy players. Several young players were put under intense scrutiny and were merely scapegoats for others. This media outlet was quite objective when Manchester United was being unfairly treated, and they praised them even more for this match. They believe that the fact that Manchester United has produced 5 to 8 outstanding young players at the same time, with at least 10 of them playing in the Premier League, demonstrates the effectiveness of the club's youth development program over the years. They predicted that Manchester United might inadvertently complete a generational shift and continue to dominate England. This is a very high evaluation. The current mainstream approach is to buy players who have already proven themselves in the league. Gambling on young players is generally considered an immature move. For example, the BBC insists that Manchester United's extensive use of young players will result in a fruitless season, and that Ferguson will likely not be able to get a contract extension from the club at the end of the season. It's like raising someone else's child and building a base for his successor. Most media outlets share the same view as the BBC, believing that Manchester United's group of physically weak young players may excel in the youth teams, but will gradually become mediocre once they reach the first team. However, some media outlets took an unconventional approach. Sky Sports specifically praised Manchester United's young players in its second-round match highlights, dedicating nearly 5 minutes to showcasing these kids to the fans. Beckham occupied a significant portion of these 5 minutes, primarily due to his outstanding performances in both matches. His striking good looks, far ahead of his contemporaries, also made him the focus of this short feature. Sky Sports and the BBC are rivals, and in their pursuit of higher ratings, the two media outlets often offer differing opinions on the same issues. Looking at the sports field alone, Sky Sports has become more commercialized and trendsetting in recent years. The BBC has repeatedly questioned the young Manchester United team through the media, but Sky Sports insists on siding with Manchester United. Thus, in the match highlights on the day of the game, the Class of '92 was presented to all England fans for the first time. As a man of striking good looks, Beckham might want to keep a low profile, but his talent doesn't allow it, and besides, he doesn't really want to. People overlooked the more than 12,000 meters he ran in the second game, and only remembered his posture when taking set pieces, his golden hair, deep blue eyes and sunny smile. People started paying attention to Beckham, with some saying his looks were comparable to those of American actor Leonardo DiCaprio. A small minority thought Beckham wasn't as handsome as Leonardo, but their voices were quickly drowned out by the majority, who believed that an actor could never compare to a football player in terms of masculine charm. Regardless of the outcome of the debate, Beckham's name quickly transcended the realm of football. The Times went so far as to feature this young man from Leytonstone, London, in its social section, focusing on Beckham's upbringing. Although Beckham was born in London, he grew up in London's East End, where the city's lower classes lived, making it a natural source of inspiration for Cthulhu novels. The Times interviewed many of Beckham's childhood neighbors, classmates, and landlords from his time living with him before he turned 18, to learn about his past through their perspectives. Overnight, Beckham found himself in the social media feed wearing a sports jacket. However, I didn't feel anything special, it was just a victory effect. If I don't play well in the next game, I might still go back to the reserve team. Anyway, he only goes between home and the training base every day. Even if he appears on the third page of The Sun, it won't make any difference. The key is to let football speak for itself. His most noticeable feeling now is soreness all over his body, especially in the areas where he was hit during the game, where a bruise has appeared. He could easily make a living based on his looks, but he insists on relying on his talent. He thinks he should sleep a little longer. End of this chapter. Chapter 21. A thief broke into the house. The day after the match against West Ham United, Beckham slept until nearly noon before being awakened by sunlight streaming through the curtains. Waking up naturally after sleeping in feels so satisfying. He rolled around on the bed and stayed there for a few more minutes, still not wanting to move. How about sleeping until the afternoon? Anyway, I'm not going to work today, so I can do whatever I want. Glug glug. After a few minutes, Beckham was jolted awake by the sounds coming from his stomach. No, I have to be strong, I have to get up. My body fat percentage is too low. I didn't eat breakfast, and if I don't eat lunch either, I'll have to lose weight passively. Thinking of this, Beckham immediately got up and went to the bathroom to relieve himself and wash up. A dozen minutes later, Beckham walked briskly into the kitchen. In less than half an hour, a hearty brunch was ready. Smoked meat, fried eggs, fried mushrooms, sausages, golden brown and crispy toast, sandwiches, plus a cup of black tea with milk and honey. A delicious brunch is ready. These dishes were served on a large plate. Beckham, who could no longer contain himself, picked up his cutlery and began to eat heartily. In less than 10 minutes, he had devoured the entire plate of food. So satisfying. Beckham stretched, feeling incredibly good. Manchester was bathed in sunshine today, a rare sight indeed. He stood there contentedly, holding a cup of red tea. On his day off, with such beautiful weather, Beckham hummed a song in a good mood, quietly enjoying the afternoon. This must be the day he felt most at ease in the past year. During this period, he lived in anticipation of becoming a key rotation player. After turning 18, players can no longer stay in the youth team. Players in this age group, unless they are particularly outstanding, usually spend some time in the reserve team or are loaned to lower-level teams for development. This age is the best time to improve skills, and players need to participate in more matches. If you haven't secured a rotation spot on your team by the age of 20, it's time to start thinking about your next destination. Giggs has been a regular starter since he was 17, and now he has been handpicked by the manager to be Manchester United's main left winger for the next decade. Gary Neville successfully transitioned into a right-back after joining the first team through his own efforts. He made nearly 20 appearances in all competitions last season, and this season he has replaced the original starting right-back Parker as Manchester United's starting right-back. This kid's dedication is truly admirable. In order to gain a foothold at Manchester United, he has almost cut off all his social life over the years and focused all his energy on football. In addition, being a fullback is a tough and tiring job, and there aren't many people who play that position, so the competition is much less compared to the midfield and forward positions. As long as he stays healthy, he should be Manchester United's starting right-back for the next decade. In addition, Butt and Scholes have also had regular playing time since last season. Of these people, I had the fewest appearances. Beckham recalled that last season he not only rarely played, but often didn't even qualify to be a bench warmer. Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore. Not being able to play football has little to do with me. Blame it on that physically gifted Soviet man. No, now it's the Ukrainian. Kanchelskis is the only player he's ever seen who doesn't need a rest. His characteristics are a good thing for the team, but for a young man eagerly waiting for his chance to play, it's torture. Beckham remembers two phrases this guy often said. Damn it, the game was over before we even had enough. The duration of a football match should be increased to 100 minutes so that my advantages can be fully realized. As long as this guy is on the team, I basically have no chance of survival. Beckham felt a pang of regret seeing Kanchelskis reduced to being sold off. The Ukrainian's time at Manchester United was short, but he was destined to become a legend in the club's history. To demonstrate his value, Beckham has put a lot of effort into improving his free kicks in recent years. He didn't want to leave the team his father loved all his life, so he practiced free kicks hard so that he could secure a place on the team. The team underwent significant personnel changes this season, and he finally got his chance. As long as he can perform consistently, he will be Manchester United's starting right winger before the winter transfer window opens. With that thought in mind, Beckham raised his teacup to the sun. Thank you for the gift of life, cheers. He was in a good mood. He went back to his bedroom, lay on his bed, and prepared to watch yesterday's game before going back to sleep. Only by maintaining ample physical fitness can one stand out in training. The old man has emphasized more than once that young players should focus on 4 things: nutritious food, sufficient sleep, high-quality training, and high-level matches. Apart from high-level competitions, the first 3 are all within my control. This is the life of a player, glamorous on the field, but living like a shut-in off the field. He continued to choose to watch Newcastle United's matches. After all, they were a star team built with a lot of money, and everyone was afraid of them. Newcastle United, playing away, remained formidable, easily defeating Bolton 3-1. Watching the performance of this title favorite team, Beckham couldn't help but marvel at how incredibly strong they were. Especially those few, black and tough, players, their physical abilities and ball skills are truly amazing, often suddenly launching a single-point attack on the opponent when the situation is evenly matched. He felt that Newcastle United were even stronger than Blackburn Rovers were last season, while the defending champions Blackburn Rovers seemed to have nothing to play for this season. They just lost to relegation favourites Sheffield Wednesday yesterday, and they seemed like a punctured balloon. Watching Newcastle United easily win another game, Beckham felt sleepy and woke up again close to 5 p.m. Sleep, eat, sleep again, it's like living the life of a pig. After sleeping all day, apart from the muscle soreness caused by the intense competition, my body feels mostly recovered. If there's a match tomorrow, as long as we warm up properly, we can definitely play another game. At this time of year, Beckham likes to meet up with a few friends for a walk and a couple of drinks in the evening, so he can start the new workday in the best possible condition. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that. It turns out that ineffective socializing and a rich nightlife can negatively impact a player's performance. Even if some people can stubbornly claim that their performance is unaffected, under equal opportunities, players who maintain a clean lifestyle will perform better and have more opportunities than those with a rich nightlife. This is the law of competition. After drinking a glass of water in the kitchen, Beckham first worked out on the treadmill for half an hour, and then focused on core training. I still have a lot of difficulties in physical confrontations. Since I can't develop strong muscles in a short time, I can only rely on my outstanding core strength to compete with those physically abnormal Premier League players. Another fulfilling day. After training, Beckham took a quick shower, walked out of the bathroom, lay on the bed, and stretched lazily. Unexpectedly, while stretching, he knocked the book on the bedside table to the ground. It's a biography that a fan gave me. I've already finished reading it, and the story made me feel so tormented that I had no temper left. Why didn't I put this book on the bookshelf? Beckham believes he will never watch it a second time, so it's better to leave it on the bookshelf. He picked up the book. It was the first page of a blank page, the one he had read and commented on that day. Below my comparison, there was an extra line: "Hello, it is rude to casually comment on other people's lives. I hope you won't be so foolish next time. What's your name? What year did you live in? Looking forward to your reply." Upon seeing several lines of text suddenly appear in his book, Beckham was first taken aback, then horrified. Could it be that a fan broke into my house, saw my comments on the blank page, and casually wrote a message? Thinking about this, Beckham felt the hairs on his body stand on end, and cold sweat trickled down his neck. End of this chapter. Chapter 22. 3 Possibilities. Upon seeing the reply in the book, Beckham felt a chill run down his spine. His first thought was that the fan had entered his room, found the book, seen his comments, and then responded with complete confidence. Outrageous. Utterly outrageous. I slept here every day and didn't even notice that someone had broken in. He was first surprised, then annoyed. My house is not a place you can just come and go as you please. Thinking of this, Beckham took out a baseball bat from the back of the wardrobe for self-defense, turned on all the lights in the house, and searched his territory from top to bottom like a lion, leaving no place unchecked, trying to find any clues left by that reckless person. He searched back and forth, not letting go of any clue. If that bastard dares to stay in the house and play blind spot with me, then I'll definitely make him suffer. I'm not afraid of you with that stick in my hand. Of course, he also considered that if he encountered a tough opponent, he would first consider using strategy, and only consider fighting head-on when there was no other way out. As soon as they hear any noise inside the house, the community security personnel will immediately surround the thief, leaving him nowhere to run. After searching the house repeatedly, Beckham found no trace of strangers. Just as he was fidgeting around in the room, there was a sudden noise coming from the door. Knock knock knock. Mr. David, are you all right? The voice sounded like Jason, a security guard responsible for community safety. Beckham opened the door only after confirming it was Jason through the doorway. Is there anything I can help you with, Mr. Jason? The middle-aged man, wearing a black felt hat, a black vest, and a white shirt, immediately put on a polite smile. I'm sorry to bother you. I just heard someone call the security department and say that all the lights in your house are on. I was thinking that you might need some help. Beckham noticed that as Jason spoke, his right hand slowly left the holster, the whole movement appearing natural and fluid. It looks very professional, but is it just for show? Beckham was secretly thinking to himself. He smiled and asked, have any strangers entered the community recently? Upon hearing Beckham's question, Jason's smile vanished. No one can come here except the residents of the community. We are professional security personnel, not thugs who take money and do nothing. I swear on my honor that no one can enter this community without our permission. Jason's face showed a look of dread. Mr. David, is there anything unusual about your residence? I was just asking casually, why are you so nervous? I just wanted to check the community's entry and exit situation. You know, there are always some fans who want to do things that they think are intimate, but are actually annoying. For example, cough cough, forgive me for not being able to go into details. Seeing Beckham's evasive tone, Jason gave him a knowing smile. You can rest assured about that. No strangers will be allowed to enter without the homeowner's permission. After all, everyone here is someone of your status. You have a good eye, Beckham muttered to himself. Of course, we will also consider the circumstances. If a distinguished guest comes to visit, we cannot rigidly enforce the rules, so as not to damage the hard-won social relationships of the residents. You speak so fluently, it's a shame you're not selling insurance. Beckham muttered to himself again, thinking that if he couldn't see Jason's rugged appearance, he would definitely think he was a salesman just by looking at his language skills. Wait a minute, Gary came to my door early last week and woke me up by banging on it. What kind of person is he? After exchanging a few polite words, Jason tactfully said, Mr. David, I will keep a close eye on your situation for the next period of time and will absolutely not allow anyone to sneak in. If anyone dares to trespass, I guarantee I will leave them with a scar they will never forget. Seeing Jensen's upturned lips, Beckham couldn't help but shiver. He recalled the rumors he had heard about Jason when he moved in. It is said that this security guard with exaggeratedly large arms served in the Marine Corps and was hired as a private security guard after his retirement. A former professional soldier, he was highly skilled, but he had some personal quirks. Whenever the law allowed him to fire a gun, he would not hesitate to break the ligaments in other people's calves. He didn't know if the rumor was true or false, but the details of the story were unsettling. This somewhat eerie rumor made Jason famous far and wide, since Beckham moved in, there haven't been any reported cases of burglary in the community. As Beckham closed the door, he heard Jason's voice from nearby, "All is well at House 8, over." After talking with Jansen, Beckham's emotions were much more stable than before. The possibility of fans entering the house seems less likely than imagined. He bought the house here precisely because of the community's security. Even though this isn't an affluent area, as far as he knows, the owners of the other houses are either high-ranking government officials, upper-middle-class people with respectable jobs, or a few nouveau riche. She pays a considerable sum of money every month to ensure her personal and property safety, making it difficult for ordinary people to break in. If we exclude human intervention, is it possible that a mysterious force could cause those words to appear automatically on the blank page? Could it be that someone sent me a magic book that allows me to communicate with other worlds? Thinking about this, Beckham laughed at his own wild imagination. He turned off the lights in the room, went back to his bedroom on the top floor, and picked up the book again to examine it carefully. The reply text seems somewhat similar to my own handwriting. Beckham took a closer look and found that the handwriting in the reply did indeed resemble his own, only it looked a bit too smooth. Could it be that the fan imitated his own handwriting by using his own signature? Beckham quickly ruled out this possibility. While he was somewhat well known in football circles, he was still a complete young man among fans, and opportunities to sign autographs were extremely rare. Even when signing autographs, no fan asked them to write any other well wishes. Your reputation is really low." Beckham chuckled twice, ruling out the possibility of imitation. After all, there's a big difference between a signature and regular handwriting. Signatures are usually handwritten and the font is specially practiced. It's impossible to imitate it and create your own unique handwriting. Could it be that I was sleepwalking and replied to myself on a blank page of this book? Ahem, it's getting dark, so it's best not to scare yourself unnecessarily. The remaining answer is that a mysterious force enables one to communicate with strangers remotely. What a wildly imaginative idea. Beckham assumed all three possibilities existed, and if it really was a fan who came to his room to reply, then he would probably still want to see his reply. If this is the case, then that guy probably just wants to be my pen pal, since the 850-pound lying in my bedroom drawer hasn't been reduced at all. Why does this most realistic possibility seem so strange? With that thought in mind, Beckham picked up the book and wrote on a blank page, "My name is David Beckham, and I think you know that very well. Come out here, be a man, instead of sneaking around in the shadows." After writing this sentence simply, he locked the book in the safe, then put the safe in the wardrobe, and stuck a hair of his in the crack of the door. Whether he was sleepwalking or an uninvited guest broke in, the hair would fall out whenever someone opened the door. He then closed the bedroom door and blocked it with a chair, so that anyone who broke into the bedroom would alert him. If no one broke in, and it's not sleepwalking, then if there's a response after opening the safe, then it really could be a mysterious event. After finishing this stunt, Beckham lay exhausted on the bed, placed the baseball bat beside him, and then covered himself with the blanket. He didn't sleep well that night. End of this chapter. Chapter 23 Wimbledon Team. The next morning, Beckham dragged his tired body out of bed. He slept fitfully throughout the night, sometimes needing to watch out for anyone entering the bedroom, and sometimes trying to determine if he was sleepwalking. He exhausted himself, and groggily opened the cabinet to check if his hair was still there and if there were any extra lines in the book. Nothing went wrong that night, which relieved him but also added to his worries. When will this mess finally end? If you keep doing this, and can't even guarantee a basic night's sleep, you might ruin your career. He restored the wardrobe to its original state, and then stuck a hair into the bedroom door. After making himself a hearty breakfast and drinking a cup of hand-ground coffee, Beckham felt much better than when he had just woken up. On his way to the parking lot, Beckham encountered Jason walking towards him. "Mr. David, have a good day." This kind of greeting is a typical example of making conversation out of nothing. Fortunately, the morning training session was mainly focused on recovery, with most of the time spent on tactical preparation. During the tactical preparation meeting, Brian Kidd showed everyone a montage of Wimbledon footage. The visuals were so graphic that Beckham felt he would have a stress reaction if he watched it for too long. There are no wrong nicknames, only wrong names. The nickname, Crazy Gang, is perfectly fitting for Wimbledon. This team has taken pragmatic football to the extreme, their main tactic is long passes and crosses accompanied by violent physical confrontations. This video can be broadcast directly on the Fighting Channel, but there may be age restrictions for viewing it. Brian Kidd would pause the video from time to time to introduce the technical characteristics of Wimbledon players. Beckham mentally summarized his thoughts. The opponent's formation was the same 4-4-2, with a combination of battering ram and cavalry in the forward line, 4 muscular midfielders who dared to fight, 2 centre-backs who were aerial dominators, and 2 full-backs who were good at long passes. The right-back's long passes were so smooth and spun that they often caused the opponent's defenders to misjudge the ball. Wimbledon is the pinnacle of English football. In every league in England, no team could gain an advantage during their peak. The team's history is also quite legendary. They were founded in the 1980s and played in the 4th tier of English football for 90 years. At that time, Wimbledon was still a technical team. In 1982, Wimbledon went winless in its first 3 games. After a month of experimentation, the head coach completely changed the team's playing style. His requirement is that the first touch of the backfield players must get the ball to the front, and each game must have 18 shots, 12 corner kicks, and 12 grenades. Then a miracle happened. This seemingly drastic change enabled Wimbledon to be promoted to the English top flight in just 4 years, and in 1988 they defeated Liverpool, who had swept England, in the Football Cup final, winning the club's first major trophy. Like Manchester United, Wimbledon's dressing room culture also emphasizes mental strength. However, their playing style is extreme, and their mental demands are also extreme. The players signed by this club usually come from poor families, so they have a strong sense of honor and a stubborn personality. Coupled with their rude behavior and unreasonable hostility during confrontations, all Premier League teams hate them. Their footwork is very ordinary, but everyone is an expert in aerial balls. Apart from direct shots, it is difficult to break through their defense with other set pieces. If you don't want to get kicked, you have to pass the ball on your second touch after receiving it. Don't blame me for not warning you. After saying that, Ferguson went on to intimidate the young men. You should be glad that tomorrow's game is in our stadium, not theirs. Have you heard their home stadium slogan? Keane immediately responded, if you come to our home stadium, you'll find it's on fire. Beckham shrugged, that phrase would also be fitting for describing hell. Although he had never played against Wimbledon's senior team, he had heard a lot of news about the club. Those scattered pieces of news may seem a little bizarre, but when put together, they would scare a player with poor mental fortitude to the point of wetting himself. Wimbledon is also known as a testing ground for young players by top Premier League teams. Once you can get past Wimbledon, you can calmly handle any extreme situation on the football field in the future. Of course, Beckham, who has experience playing in England's 3rd tier, is not afraid of them. As long as he is careful, he is unlikely to get injured. After leaving the meeting room, Beckham planned to go straight home to catch up on sleep. Although his mind had made the house resemble a crime scene from a detective novel, he was simply too tired and wanted to go home and catch up on some sleep. He was about to head towards the parking lot when Gary Neville stopped him. David, it's not even 11 o'clock yet, aren't you going to practice a little longer? If he remembers correctly, Gary Neville has been training every day since the team assembled in July, without ever taking a break. According to his observation, although Gary Neville's training program was demanding, it was quite scientific. Despite his small and thin appearance, he actually has excellent explosive power and can throw the ball from the sideline into the penalty area. In addition, his long passing skills are outstanding. Even among all England right-backs, he is considered top-level. However, compared to myself, I'm still a bit lacking. I'm under pressure to help the team win tomorrow, so I won't be practicing today. Gary, you need to work on your short passing practice. You absolutely can't mess things up tomorrow. If you directly tell him you don't want to practice, Gary Neville can lecture you for an hour straight, so it's easier to just shut him up. Sure enough, Gary Neville was speechless for a long time after hearing his words. In the final moments of the match against West Ham United, he passed the ball to the opposing striker in his own half. Fortunately, West Ham United centre-forward was unprepared and failed to control the ball properly. So for the next period of time, Gary Neville was so badly scolded by Schmeichel that he couldn't even lift his head. Gary Neville wanted to retaliate, but he had been hit where it hurt, and after stammering for a while, he only managed to say one sentence, "Fine, whatever makes you happy." Beckham ran into Jansen again at his doorstep, but Jansen simply greeted him and left. This guy seems to want to prove through his actions that he is always under the other party's protection and has no need to worry about his safety. Such thoughtful service. There's a reason why the service fee is high. Beckham opened the door and immediately ran up to the third floor to check if any of the traps he had set had been triggered. The hair on the bedroom door was still there, and so was the hair on the wardrobe. When will this damn game of hide-and-seek end? Should we look for other items to replace hair? If this matter drags on for a year or two and the truth is not found, what if we end up bald from all the hair? Beckham chuckled to himself as he opened the safe, took out the book, and turned to a blank page, his heart instantly racing. I might be being targeted by some mysterious force. End of this chapter. Chapter 24 Identification Issues. Beckham turned to a blank page in the book, and there was a new reply on it. Okay, then I'll call you David for now. First of all, I want to say that I'm not hiding in the shadows. You might not believe it, but our communication is limited to this book. I'm from 2010, which is why I asked you which year you're from. No matter who you are, if you lived before 2010, I will use my memories to give you some benefits, and vice versa. The least probable thing happened, someone actually wrote letters to me across time and space. Beckham could hardly believe his eyes, it felt like he was in a dream. Why does this person's tone sound so eager? Even in his extreme shock, Beckham sensed the other party's strong desire to communicate. Based on the situation over the past 2 days, we can rule out the possibility that someone broke into the house and left a message on the books. The hair was styled to be very concealed, and only the person in question knew the combination to the safe. As for the possibility of sleepwalking, it can also be ruled out. There were no new words in the book before I left home in the morning, these contents were added by myself during training. Beckham couldn't think of any other possibilities for the time being, and he tentatively assumed that the person he was communicating with remotely came from another dimension. However, the other person's eagerness to communicate aroused his suspicion. Perhaps this person came from an earlier era and had something urgent to solve that he couldn't make up his mind about, so he needed to extract information from him. If that's the case, then I need to be careful with my reply this time. It is necessary to determine the era in which the other party lived, and this information must be useful to oneself, but one must not make the other party feel that one is trying to extract information for personal gain. Yes, it needs to be carefully considered. Beckham stuffed the book into the safe, and then put the safe back into the closet. I have training this afternoon, so I need to prepare my own lunch now, and then take a nap after I've digested it. If you eat lunch too late and go to sleep before you've digested much of it, it will definitely affect your performance in the afternoon. One should not completely disrupt one's life routine just because one encounters a mysterious entity. A person with this mindset will never achieve great things. While grilling a semi-finished steak, Beckham pondered how to extract information. If that person really is from 2010, then I am actually of no value to him. No one in this world will give to others for no reason. If you want to get valuable information from someone, you also need to have something they want. How can someone living in 1995 help someone living in 2010? Are you suggesting we say, Brazil won the 1994 World Cup, if only you had the foresight to bet on the match back then? Therefore, this reply is likely a one-off deal, and I only have one chance to extract information from the other party. If the other party is a smart person, they will quickly determine the era in which you live, and may not even give you the only chance. However, that's not necessarily true. Since this person appears in his own biography, the names Manchester United and Beckham might be a connection in his heart. In your subsequent replies, be sure to make good use of key information and maintain contact for as long as possible. Beckham's main purpose in replying was to grasp the key information and extract as much benefit as possible. As Beckham ate, he pondered the fact that he could receive information about the future. Despite the unremarkable black pepper steak, he still enjoyed it. After lunch, Beckham paced back and forth in the middle of the living room. What should I ask? What will be the result of the next match? League champions? Yes, both of these approaches are correct. They seem to be verifying the authenticity of information, and in fact, they have obtained reliable information. Actually, all these questions are addressed in this biography, but the other party may not have a copy of the book. In addition, they will ask about your personal matters, such as who you will marry in the future. He hadn't thought about these things, but the fact that the biography included Victoria in his life was something he simply couldn't stand. If the other person is from the future, they should be able to answer this question. Beckham suddenly had an idea. He quickly ran up to his bedroom on the top floor, picked up a pen, and started writing. I'm so glad to receive your reply. I still can't believe it's all true. Please forgive me for asking a few questions to verify the facts. I think it's important to me. First, the opponent and score of Manchester United in the third round of the 1995-1996 season. Second, which team won the league title this season, and what was Newcastle United's league standing at the end of the season? Third, who will I marry in the future? My questions are focused on this season because everyone understands how important this season is for Manchester United and for me. Looking forward to your reply. Beckham still hasn't mentioned the era he lived in, and if the other party finds out he lived 15 years ago, they might just cut off contact. Unless he wants to get something out of this place. As for the importance of this season to Manchester United, that's just his overstatement. It would be plausible in any season. But it is indeed very important to me, as this is likely to be my first season where I will be playing as a key player, and its importance is self-evident. Beckham closed the book, put it back in the safe, and relaxed on the bed. My reply is actually not convincing at all. If the other party thinks about it carefully, they can figure out the time period in which I lived. But there's nothing we can do about it. We don't have any prophetic information to rely on. If you deceive someone to obtain information, they will definitely cut off contact once they find out. Nobody likes a dishonest person, and I wouldn't do such a thing myself. That's it. That's all I can do. From now on, I can only let things take their course. Even if the other party doesn't reply, I won't suffer any loss, at least it won't affect my current life. Beckham fell asleep within minutes of lying down. Falling asleep instantly is an important trait he inherited from his father. When the alarm rang, Beckham immediately flipped through the books. No reply. With just over an hour left before training, there wouldn't be enough time to warm up if we didn't leave soon. When Beckham drove his car into the parking lot, he saw Giggs' red BMW. This kid is ready to train, his recovery speed is pretty good. This guy felt discomfort in his hamstring during the preseason, and then pulled it again during a warm-up game. These days he can only watch the games on TV. Poor thing. Wait a minute, how come there's another scratch on his car? Beckham mentally criticized Giggs' driving habits. He remembered the used Ford that guy had sold him. The Ford, with its astonishingly long repair list, had previously been owned by two different people, so he bought it from Giggs for £3,000. Judging from the car's surprisingly long maintenance history, neither of its previous owners were reliable people. This made Beckham hesitant to accelerate during his first week of driving it, fearing that it might break down halfway and he would be in serious trouble. After he bought that 3-story villa, the car couldn't accelerate anymore. Gary Neville and his gang were always clamoring to come to his house to play pool, and they also loved to hitch a ride in his car. Often, a bunch of people would crowd into his car, and once the door could barely close. Fortunately, after signing adult contracts with the team, everyone was able to afford a car, and the previous impoverished life of a group of people crammed into one car came to an end. End of this chapter.